Hello, my name is Sabina Pennington, and I am the Public Education and Outreach Specialist for the Choctawhatchee Bay Estuary Program. I know that's a mouthful, so let me share about the Estuary Program and why it's important to businesses like yourself. The Estuary Program is a community-based organization that works within the community, businesses, and other partners to focus efforts to restore and protect the Choctawhatchee Bay and the 5,400 square miles of rivers and streams that lead to the bay. The Estuary Program is very important to our area, not just to encourage the maintaining of a healthy environment, it also helps to support and strengthen our diverse local economic and recreational opportunities. By connecting our communities to our waters, we develop a sense of accountability and pride with our residents and visitors who come to enjoy our beautiful waters. This connection helps promote a watershed that's free of debris and litter, that is not only harmful to the plants and wildlife that rely on our waters, but also those that are boating, swimming, and using other forms of recreational activity. The Estuary Program works together with 4 counties in Florida and in Alabama, advocating for the Choctawhatchee Bay watershed through partnerships with businesses like yourself. By working together, we can provide education and outreach about our area and ensure future stewardship initiatives. By building these partnerships, we will help ensure a vibrant economy and a high quality of life within our region for many years to come. Let's work together for a healthy environment that will support our local economy and our citizens. How can we help you?
Hello and welcome to Okaloosa County's annual Waterway Safety Meeting, or as I like to call it, awesome!
Hey, wait, cut. That's not in the script, Chris.
Hello and welcome to Okaloosa County's annual Waterway Safety Meeting. Here on the Gulf Coast, where emerald waters meet sandy shores, the heart of our communities beat in rhythm with the flow of our waterways. So as we convene to discuss waterway safety, let's do so with the vision that public safety is not just a checklist, but a communal endeavor, a commitment to each other and to the countless souls who are drawn to our shores. Today, we will hear from the guardians of those waterways, representatives from local military, law enforcement, and public safety agencies. This year, we have an added feature to submit questions in real time by scanning the QR code located on each table. Following the presentations, there will be an opportunity to meet with these agencies one-on-one to ask more specific and personalized questions. Our goal and shared responsibility, as we all play a pivotal role, is to create an environment of safety and adventure. Vendors, your dedication to ensuring safety in and around the water is the cornerstone of our community's prosperity. So let's unite in our commitment to elevate waterway safety standards. By working together, we can better protect locals and visitors while enhancing the allure of our community. Thank you all for being the heartbeat of our waterways in Okaloosa County. Here's to a season where safety, community, and prosperity intertwine, creating a legacy that we can all be proud of.
The Waterway Rental Vendor Safety Ordinance was adopted April 19, 2022. The purpose is to regulate livery vessels, rental vendors, and operators in order to promote safety, encourage tourism, support reasonable marine businesses, and protect our natural resources. Here is what's required. You could also scan the QR code to read the complete ordinance.
Definitely with the support of our county commission, the residents here in this county, Sheriff Aiden, definitely all big proponents of our marine unit and trying to keep our waterways safe. And we're doing obviously what we can with the guys that we have and the boats that we have, and I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to decrease, enhancing our BUI enforcement to try and decrease our boating crashes and boating fatalities that we have on Okaloosa County waterways. How we educate people is just making sure that people are out there responsible, because driving a boat, driving a jet ski is a whole lot different than driving a car. You don't have brakes, so you can't stop them very easy. So, that's our biggest thing, is trying to educate. And, again, that's why we have enhanced our DUI enforcement with us at the Sheriff's Office, with Florida Wildlife and the U.S. Coast Guard. We're a force multiplier here in our county. A majority of our vessel crashes and crashes involving fatalities tend to involve alcohol.
Aqua Alert was basically formed by a lady named Miss Judy. Her husband went kayaking out here by the East Pass near the jetties and stuff, and unfortunately disappeared. And unfortunately, we were never able to locate him. Miss Judy came up with this plan, and she's been going all around the country trying to push this plan, and we spearheaded it as the Sheriff's Office here at Okaloosa County. Sheriff Aiden's a big supporter of it. The Aqua Alert basically is everybody knows what Amber Alert is. So as long as everybody's got the app downloaded here in our area, obviously we have a big boating community, so this is unfortunate circumstances why this started, but this is going to be a great program, at least for us, because basically it's the same kind of notification system as, if there's a boater that's overdue or is missing and hasn't returned home or something like that, we can put out this Aqua Alert, similar to the Amber Alert, to where it notifies everybody that has the app. So most of our captains, boat captains, we got one of the biggest charter fleets out here in the state, and biggest boating community in the entire state, where if anybody is out on the water and they get this Aqua Alert, they can be on the lookout also. And not just us out there looking, and Coast Guard and FWC is basically a force multiplier. All the boaters that are offshore or anything like that, they can keep an eye out for it also.
Thanks. That was Sabina Pennington with the Choctawhatchee Bay Estuary Program. You can learn about them and their efforts at choctawbay.org. How's everybody doing today? Are you guys ready for the season? Yeah? Okay. Law enforcement? I didn't hear somebody cheer? No? Okay. Well, welcome waterway business owners and public servants to the annual Waterway Safety Meeting, aka Awesome, as coined by our Coastal Code Enforcement Officer, Chris Mitchell. I'm Nick Tomachek, and I'll be guiding us through these waters, these awesome waters, pun intended. We're all here for one goal: to ensure that we're doing the very best to make sure that we keep the waterways safe for our visitors, for our locals, for our businesses. And so that's why we're all gathered here today, and we have some exceptional presentations. So let's get on to it. Presenters, there is a clicker up here for your presentation. As they are talking, feel free to scan that QR code, ask a question. I've already got one question in. I did get it, so it's working. And then when they're finished presenting, I'll be asking those particular agencies those questions and let you guys know what those are. So with that, our first presenter is Sergeant Corbett.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Kyle Corbett. I'm the supervisor sergeant of the Beach Marine Unit here at the Sheriff's Office. Most of you guys, I think I know most of y'all, because I've been part of this unit for almost 8 years now. I got a obviously I don't have a PowerPoint or anything, because a lot of the stuff that I talked about last year, I stole the topics from FWC and from the Coast Guard, so I'm going to let them handle all that stuff this year. But just a couple things that I'm going to talk about. What you guys did last year, at least with your livery companies, the Water Sports Coalition, the education that you guys provided your customers last year was above and beyond what we expected. Our BUI numbers got cut in half pretty much from what we had in the past few years. And I think a lot of that is, you know, of course, education from us, Coast Guard, FWC, but a lot of it starts with you guys, for the rental companies, and educating your customers. And that's the biggest thing that we saw, where we were stopping people and, you know, we were checking people, you know, if they were intoxicated. And everybody was like, oh no, you know, these companies told us all about you guys out here. You know, how many arrests y'all had last year, you know, with us and FWC. And, you know, so it's getting out there. Everybody knows that we're obviously one of the top boating destinations in the state, but we're also, over the past few years, been top BUI arrests in the entire state, which is, it's not something that we're proud of. You know, but again, our enforcement, you know, we increase our enforcement with FWC and with the Coast Guard because we're trying to get out of this top 10 in boating crashes every year, right? And that's the main goal of us, of FWC, and of Coast Guard, you know, because we hate, you know, dealing with crashes. Well, luckily we don't have to deal. That's all FWC. We give that all to them, but, you know, majority of the crashes, you know, are because of alcohol, pretty much, or, you know, operators that aren't familiar with the waterways, or, you know, the just boats in general. So kudos to you guys, the livery companies, for the education of your customers. You know, we're definitely seeing it, and I've talked with FWC, they're seeing it. Coast Guard is also. It's definitely a good thing that you guys are doing. So keep it up. Just a couple other things that I have. Everybody's aware of at least we have parasail captains and other captains in here, correct? The 700-foot rule here in Okaloosa County. Please, please, please tell your captains, your parasail captains, your dolphin cruise captains, to make sure they are staying off the beach more than 700 feet. I can't tell you, unfortunately, I gave my cell phone out to a bunch of people, and my phone was blowing up every single day in the entire summer, night and day, well, let's see, sunset, about dolphin boats, parasail boats being way too close to shore. You know, even over there on Eglin property, that guy's out there patrolling every day. That's what he does. So be mindful of that. You know, we don't want to come out there and write you professionals a ticket for violating a county ordinance. It's not something that we like to do. So just stay off the beach. I know that's where all the dolphins and all the cool fish and stuff are at. So just be mindful of that, and please make sure we follow the ordinance and staying off the beach. Other than that, for us as a sheriff's office, it's going to be business as usual for us this year. Just like with FWC and all the other law enforcement here in the county. I think we are starting, for those of you that are interested, I think we got 2.5, 3 weeks until our spring break operation starts. So, I mean, shoot, it seems like our Labor Day was just a month ago. So now we're getting started again here in just a couple weeks. So let's see, what else do we got? I think that's pretty much it with us for the sheriff's office. So, you know, we're going to have our usual, we got our 5 boats out there. Luckily, we got approval from the county this year. They knew our waterways, the boating community is exploding. And so they saw that, and, you know, they purchased a new vessel for us. It's going to increase our capabilities. It's a larger vessel that, you know, we can go handle stuff better offshore and get places faster here within the county. So obviously thankful to our community and our county commissioners for approving that and increasing our capabilities out here in the waterways of Okaloosa County. So, but other than that, that's about all I have, and let FWC and Coast Guard cover. I'm sure you guys got all the questions for them, and I know Chris, wherever she's going to get bombarded with questions with this new ordinance. Thank you for coming here, because if you weren't here, then you're not operating the county this year. So, but you guys will find that out here shortly.
All right, Sergeant Corbett, give it up to Sergeant Corbett, everybody. Thank you. We certainly appreciate all the work that you guys do at the sheriff's office. So. I don't see any questions right now. My internet is messing up, so unless somebody submitted one, and I'm not seeing it. So, next up we have Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, William Oliver, Lieutenant Shelton Bartlett. Come on up, guys.
All right, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Shelton Bartlett, Florida Fish and Wildlife, assigned here in Okaloosa County, one of the field supervisors for the county. This is William Oliver, and we brought over the subject matter expert, Lieutenant Carade. He works in boating waterways over in Tallahassee. Pretty much today we're going to do the same thing we did last year. We're going to cover most of the general livery regulations for you guys. And then obviously at the end, we're going to be sticking around, so any specific questions about anything to do with livery regulations, livery applications, some of the normal insurance questions you guys got, please feel free to ask. Before I forget about this, this is something I want to talk to you guys about last year, but I completely forgot. But a couple years ago, they passed a law, basically you have to slow down to slow speed, minimum weight, within 300 feet of a law enforcement vessel when the lights are activated. We just started writing a bunch of tickets on that last year. I don't know if anybody, the message didn't get out, people didn't know about it, but livery vessels were included in that. We started writing violations, so just want to make you guys aware of that, make sure y'all pushing that out to your customers when they rent the boats. If they see Coast Guard, us, the sheriff's office, anybody with flashing blue lights, they need to slow down to slow speed when they come by us. Obviously that prevents, causing a bunch of damage to our boats and customers' boats and everything else. I'm going to turn it over to Officer Oliver here. He's going to go over the general livery regulations, and then I'm going to jump in here at the end and kind of cover some of the new Okaloosa County safety zones that are slow speed zones that they put in over there in Santa Rosa Sound.
Thank you all for being here. I just want to kind of tailor to our audience today. So who is here either is interested in opening a livery or has opened a livery within the past year and a half? Just a show of hands. Okay, so we have some interested. I know there were some last year. And then show of hands, just, who's owned a livery probably for the past 10, 15 years here. Okay, all right. So it is kind of overwhelming if you're just now getting into the livery business rather than being in it for a long period of time. Regulations do change. So if at any point in time the PowerPoint's overwhelming, see us back out in the hallway. We can go over it, more in detail individually. I'm going to touch on the definition of livery first. A livery is defined in section 327.54. Florida statute as a person, corporation, company, business, or entity that advertises a livery vessel for use by another in exchange for any type of consideration or payment, and does not provide the renter or leasee with a captain, crew, or any type of staff or personnel to operate, oversee, maintain, or manage the vessel. Okay, a note is that a vessel rented or leased by a livery is a livery vessel, and that's going to be defined in the Florida statute. Our Florida statute does not define bareboat, okay? What is not a livery? So a livery vessel means a vessel leased, rented, or chartered to another for consideration. A livery is not a public or private school or post-secondary institution located within Florida. A vessel that was not advertised and was loaned to someone who the vessel owner knows, regardless of whether payment or consideration was given. A rented vessel, if the renter is provided a captain, crew, or any type of staff or personnel to operate, oversee, or maintain, or manage the vessel. Okay, so last year our boating law administrators, you got together, the livery permit was new last year, okay? We took it pretty lenient on enforcing it over the summer as it was a new law. That's going to be different this year. We are going to start, pushing that. We took an educational approach last year, and a lot of the inspections we did, a lot of the bigger liveries already had it, but we did run into some people, coming out of boat ramps and stuff that did not have this permit. So it's been out there for a little bit, so we're definitely gonna start enforcing that this summer. But 327.54 decimal or paren 2, a livery may not offer a vessel for lease or rent without first being issued a no-cost livery permit by the commission. The permit must be renewed annually. Okay, so and it was date of birth, right? So date of birth. So whenever the owner's date of birth or the company's date of birth, then that's going to be when it needs to be renewed by. To qualify for issuance or renewal of livery permit, an applicant must provide the commission with a list of all vessels offered by the livery for lease or rent by another, have valid insurance pursuant to subsection 7, which is $500,000 per person and $1 million per event. Have an amount of United States Coast Guard approved lawful personal flotation devices on site sufficient to accommodate the capacity of all vessels offered by the livery for rent or lease. Okay. They would also need to have on site all safety equipment required by statute 327.50 and Code of Federal Regulations. It's talking fire extinguishers, type 4 throwable flotation devices, sound producing devices. And then display of the information required, you're going to see that a couple times in the PowerPoint. The yellow signage, so you have motorized vessel, rental safety signage, paddlecraft, sailboat, and personal watercraft, so jet skis and wave runners. Those have to be displayed for the renting public to see, okay? I'm going to cover it a little later. It's going to be common violations seen, but I'll talk about that a little later. If before the annual renewal of the permit, the information required by this subsection changes, the livery must provide the commission with the updated information within 10 days after the change. So say you add or take away vessels, that's got to be noted, it's got to be sent in. I know with Destin, I don't think you can add any more vessels, so we don't need any more. So, but Fort Walton or Shalimar, I'm not sure what the city mandates for them, but if you change your number of vessels you're renting, you're going to have to send that in. Here is a photo of the livery permit certification. I have it out there on the table. It's basically just some questions. How many vessels are you renting? Do you have enough life jackets for everyone on board? You're just going to go through there and answer, list all your vessels, list your insurance, and then you're going to send it in. You're going to sign it, and you're going to send it in. But it's pretty self-explanatory once you read it. This is the permit checklist. I stapled them together. So it's the permit checklist, and then it's this form here. Okay. The checklist just keeps you organized. Okay. It shows you all the documents you need, and then what you need to put in that certification form. And then you just send that off.
You want to hit on that other form, the second one, real quick, brother? The one to the right about the insurance?
Oh, is that the insurance?
Yeah, the insurance.
I have that form a little later, I believe.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah. Let me double check. No, I guess I don't. Yeah, right here. Okay. Yeah. We'll touch on that later. So this is the livery permit, okay? This is what it's going to look like when you actually get your permit. It's going to have the business name, business address, and it's going to have the valid until, okay? This is what we're going to be looking for when we come and do an inspection on the livery. It's going to have that little number right down there that we can look up. We also have a list of everyone that has a certified given permit, okay, from our agency, so. All right, so this is where you're going to email all the forms to, liverypermit@myfwc.com, or you may send it by mail to that address right there, FWC Boating and Waterways, livery permit, 620 South Meridian Street in Tallahassee. Livery operator permits are issued once all required forms and documentation have been received by FWC. And can you attest to how long that's taken for those to get out?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what's there. The staff that works for me that approves all these permits, she's going through and looking at the certification, the checklist, the insurance documents, all that paperwork. So it's kind of dependent on that. She's really good. She's all caught up on everything right now. So anything that comes in, if there's an issue, she's really good about either reaching out by phone or email to kind of say, hey, I'm missing this or missing that. So as soon as everything is in, it's usually within a couple-day turnaround, you should have a permit. If there's a holiday or there's lag, you send something in on Friday, it may take a couple days the next week to get back, but keep in touch with her via that livery permit email address is a real good way to get in touch with us if you have any questions.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to move on to, these are kind of the general livery regulations. A livery may not knowingly lease or rent a vessel to any person when the number of persons intended to use the vessel exceeds that of the capacity plate. Horsepower of the motor exceeds capacity of the vessel. When a vessel does not contain required safety equipment. When vessel is not seaworthy, is a derelict vessel, or is at risk becoming derelict. I have actually encountered that situation before. So. Maintain your boats. Most of the liveries here, you know, they pull them out every winter. They work on them. They renew them, you know, and they're good as new when they're going back in. I'm not saying that's a problem we're seeing with the bigger liveries. It's mainly just people renting their personal boats out, okay? But I have come across that. Unless the livery provides pre-rental or pre-ride instruction in compliance with the commission. So just your briefings, make sure they're in compliance with commission standards. The instructions must include, but need not be limited to, operational characteristics of the vessel to be rented, safe operation, and vessel right-of-way, the responsibility of the vessel operator for the safe and proper operation of the vessel, local characteristics of the waterway, navigational hazards, boating restricted areas, which is no wake zones, and water depths. Emergency procedures, capsizing, falls overboard, taking on water, and vessel accidents. And that's this slide, but the attestation form is pretty much, if you go down that and you cover that, then that's about all you need to cover, because it has pretty much everything on it. Any person receiving instruction in the safe handling of livery vessels pursuant to this paragraph must provide the livery with a written statement attesting to each component of the instruction. Form must be signed by the individual providing the instruction. Livery shall maintain the statement form for no less than 90 days. The update this year is there are now 2 forms, one for motorized vessels and one for human powered. The form was kind of condensed last year, just one form, so the 2 forms just make it a little easier. It covers motorized and it covers kayaks and paddleboards. Yeah, I got some stuff right here I'm gonna go over, and then you can touch on it as well. But as far as I got for some of these things on the attestation form, this is a statewide form. It's not really tailored to what Destin sees. Just a couple of things, and now this might be, most of y'all do not. I would say probably about 90% of liveries do not have water skiing and, you know, wakeboards rented out to their boats, okay? It's extremely dangerous, but some may, and they would need to cover that. But for the liveries that I've seen, most of them do not give out tubing, they prohibit it, stuff like that. Manatees. We are seeing more manatees. It's on the second page here. Manatee awareness. Not like a huge thing that is affecting the everyday boater in Destin, okay? But yes, we are seeing a little bit more of them. But like, say, the Keys down in the National Marine Sanctuary, where like you run aground down there, you're getting charged for it. That's something that, you know, a livery down there would need to tell people and brief them on, okay? So, as far as Destin, operator responsibility, a lot of them are good. Navigational rules, especially with the construction going on around Brooks Bridge, that's something that you're really gonna have to, because they're getting ready to start that, you're gonna have to, you know, tell them about that and warn them about that. Just general things, propulsion, steering, on jet skis, you know, off throttle steering. So like you have to have the throttle pressed to turn a jet ski. And I know a lot of y'all, it seems very simple, but the people coming here to rent vessels, they might not have ever driven a vessel before. So it's just something to cover. Did you have anything else as far as?
I was just going to touch on the reason, because I've gotten the question about, well, why do we split these into 2 forms? So as he touched on, the original form was a one-size-fits-all to cover everything from y'all up here to Key West. So the different liveries, we got some feedback from particular paddlecraft liveries that said, hey, why do I have to cover PWC operation? Why I have to cover, you know, how to tow a skier and road water sports? So we split them into 2 forms just to kind of make it a little easier if it works that way. like he touched on, if there's categories in there that y'all feel don't apply to you, you don't have to note them. Just know if there's an accident or an incident or something happens, an officer comes to, ask, well, why wasn't this covered? As long as you have a justifiable reasons why you didn't cover, naval base instruction because you're not operating near a naval base or something like that, that's perfectly fine. Another caveat to this is this is the base form. You are more than welcome to add anything to this form that you want. So if you've got specific stuff for your area you want to add to, I know John's done a fantastic job with those forms, adding things kind of specific. So yeah, if there's anything you want to add to this form in addition to it, there's nothing wrong with doing that. So.
Perfect. Got that one covered. These are the forms. So this is just the motorized form. Out there on the table, we have the human-powered vessel form as well. Yeah, and you can find all these forms that I put in here are, you type in FWC livery or liveries online in Google, it'll take you right to our commission page, and they're all hyperlinked there. So that's where I got them all. You can print them off, read them, do whatever you want with them on there. So livery rules explained. Further, livery must display boating safety information in a place visible to the renting public. Already kind of touched on that. That's the yellow signage. Livery must have written agreement with renter or leasee. Agreement must include the name, address, and date of birth for the renter and the number of people aboard the vessel, as well as the time the vessel is required to be returned to the livery, emergency contact name, address, and telephone number. Most of the agreements, written agreements I've seen with a lot of the liveries have been great. Like, they've had more information than what we require, which is fantastic. But I've also seen liveries that don't have any of this information. So just make sure you have the base information there, and you'll be good. Livery shall maintain agreement for no less than 1 year. Okay, so store it somewhere for 1 year, just in case we need to access it for, say, a boating accident or otherwise. This is an example of the signage. They're going to be yellow. You can obtain them from the agency at no cost. If you're renting pontoons per se, you need the motorboat. If you're renting jet skis, you need the personal watercraft one. Same thing with kayaks and paddleboards, you need the paddlecraft one. Okay? You have all three, you need all three. Available insight for the renting public. A livery may not knowingly lease or rent a vessel to a person who is required to comply with statute 327-395. That's going to be the boater safety education requirement. So anyone born after January 1st, 1988 needs a boater safety license. Anybody before is exempt. Unless such person, and that's what I just said, so documentation or meets the exemption. If a vessel is unnecessarily overdue more than 4 hours, that was new from last year, right? Yeah, so after contract states, livery must notify law enforcement. If it's like 6:30 and it's like 7:30 and they still haven't come in, go ahead and notify us, because like we had a jet ski out like 10 p.m. last year, and it was pretty late, and it was interesting. So go ahead and notify us if it's getting dark. That's definitely, don't wait 4 hours. Okay. May not knowingly lease or rent a livery vessel other than a human-powered vessel to any person who is under 18 years of age. And I understand that I've caught them out there under 18. As long as they leave the dock and someone above 18 or above is driving, I understand that y'all can't handle who drives out there. Okay, we will handle it at that point. So the new insurance stuff. It changed last year, and it's also going to a little bit tweaked this year. A livery may not lease or rent or offer to lease or rent any livery vessel unless the livery obtains and carries in full force and effect a policy from a licensed insurance carrier in this state which insures the livery against any accident, loss, injury, property damage, or other casualty caused by or resulting from the operation of the livery vessel. Policy coverage of at least $500,000 per person and $1 million per event. Proof of insurance is what we're going to want to see upon inspection. Provide to each renter the insurance carrier's name and address and policy number. And either obtains and carries in full force and effect a policy from a licensed carrier in this state which insures the renter in the same manner and amounts of the policy obtained by the livery. All right, or presents the renter with the opportunity to purchase coverage which insures the renter in the same manner and amounts of the policy obtained by the livery. All right. If a renter chooses, this is the new part, if a renter chooses not to purchase the coverage, the livery must obtain a signed acknowledgement from the renter, which includes an attestation as to whether the renter has a Florida Boating Safety Identification Card issued by the Commission, or a temporary certificate, or another form of boating certification. And that includes the following statement, okay? And this, I have these forms on the table out there, but it's basically, I'm not gonna read through that, but that is the verbiage that needs to be in there, and this pretty much protects y'all in the case that they're refusing the insurance and they go out there and, you know, heaven forbid, kill someone. But this is the new form. Did you want to?
So this form here is an optional form. I'll preface that by this. We got a lot of questions from folks saying, well, what do I do? This verbiage, if I'm providing rental coverage, it says, you know, all the specific things that are outlined in 32754 subsection 7. To include a bindable price, that's an important one to make note of on there, that you have to, if they're denying this coverage, you have to include a bindable price. They will get provided that bindable price from the insurance company that they contact. It must be in there. We created this form as an option for y'all to utilize if you want. You don't have to use our form. You can create your own. You can make it electronic, whatever. The only caveat to that is it has to have the exact verbiage that's in statute. Under 32754 has to be on that acknowledgement form. So again, this form is on our website. It's available for y'all to utilize if you wish, or you can create one on your own.
All right, so to continue, any person delivering instruction regarding the safe operation of vessels or pre-rental, pre-ride instruction must have successfully completed a boating safety education course approved by the National Association, NASBLA, of State Boating Law Administrators. Vessels involved in an accident must be reported to the division. A livery shall make its facilities and records available for inspection upon request by law enforcement no later than 24 hours after receiving notice from law enforcement. If there's a bad boating accident and a livery is involved, we are probably going to follow up with an inspection, okay? So just make sure your records are available to inspect. A lot of what I see is I get there and the insurance is either lapsed or it's not the current insurance form, and then I have to wait there for 30 minutes while needing to go to the hospital as well for you to get the current insurance form to me. So just try to keep it up to date. I know y'all are busy, it's chaotic, but it is important to have those forms readily available. So any person administrating the Florida Boater Education Temporary Certificate Examination. I've seen a lot of liveries actually do away with this or kind of step away from it. I know I'm sure some still do it. A lot are doing the QR code, but if you have anyone giving out a paper test, they have to take the livery operator's online course and obtain that certificate. It has to be on file so that we can inspect it, okay? And then anybody briefing a vessel, okay? It's gonna offer good insight on the things you need to do to brief a vessel, information, stuff like that. It's on our site, they can take it. All the liveries have it, but I've seen a couple that have not. Common violations encountered, boating safety equipment missing or not serviceable. It's a big one, it's a misdemeanor. The workers, the owner, the manager, any of them can get charged with this. Signage for the public missing or faded. I have gone to a couple liveries where it's like the Florida sun beats down on those things. If it's not legible, it doesn't count, okay? So get them renewed, get them, you know, they'll crack. It's just plastic, so just get them renewed, they're free. Insurance lapsed, I just kind of spoke on that. Just have your updated forms. Livery operator course certificate, different from livery permit. That's that certificate I just spoke on. They need that and the boater safety license, okay? When we're coming to inspect a livery, we usually, how I do it is, who's working today, who was working when that boating accident took place, and that's who I wanna see their certificates for, okay? Most are pretty organized, but I don't wanna have to, you know, again, wait for 30 minutes to dig up a binder, you know, and it might not be there, so. New hires not familiar with rules and regulations leading to violations. So I went to a livery last year. You know, hiring young people, that's fine, that's great. It's a great way for them to get experience. I was young when I worked at a livery, so, but they just need to know the regulations, okay? It is important, and you know, leaving a life jacket off of a boat that has a child under 6 on it, you know, is a big deal. So if anything happened to that boat, it sunk, and we do an investigation into that, you know, we're coming back to that livery, and it's going to fall on that livery for sure. So just make sure whatever training you're doing that they're following it. Have someone shadow them for a couple days, and so we know, you know, things are good, and that boat's good to be sent out. Renting personal vessels from local boat ramps, that's the biggest thing that we deal with. Pretty much all of the regulations, they are violating them, okay? I've seen boats come out with no life jackets, no Type 4s, no sound producing devices. They're listing, I mean, it's countless, no livery permit, no insurance. So that is where we're gonna start hammering people, okay? Because that's super dangerous. They're not briefing people. You know, they're showing up, having them just show up at local boat ramps, putting the boat in the water, sending them out, okay? That is not gonna fly, all right? So, and this is the new, you wanna touch on those?
Yeah, I hit on. So just a quick note on what he's talking about, the common violations. I know some of the things I've seen last year, and we appreciate this from you guys most of the times. You know, a customer take your boat out, your jet ski, he'll ding into something, a couple $100 worth of damage. You guys will work it out, you know, settle it with the customer amongst each other. But it's those calls that we get, you know, 2 o'clock the next day where somebody took your boat out the day before, and obviously it's got several $1,000s worth of damage. The guy said, hey, I'll write you a check in the morning. He takes off, leaves town, and then you guys start calling us saying, hey, we need a boating accident report. The guy didn't pay me the money he was gonna pay me. It's not the time to call us. You should call us when that accident happens. Anything that's visually gonna be over $2,000, obviously if you got a death, missing person, that's common sense. But if you have any vessel come in, it looks like it's got $2,000 of damage or more, you need to go ahead and call us and come out and do that report, not call us, you know, later on. Obviously that is a violation of state statute not to report the accident when it happens. You guys are required to do that. But we got those calls several times last year. Same thing, we talking about delivery permits. That information's getting out there now. Everybody should know about it, so make sure you guys apply for those. And then I do want to give you guys some kudos because we had several boats last year, like Sergeant Corbett hit on earlier. We're sitting out there watching these vessels. Everybody on that boat appears to be highly intoxicated, and we're like, okay, they're fixing to leave any minute. Next thing we know, somebody from your livery pulls up and jumps on and drives the boat in. So we definitely appreciate that. Definitely seen an increased effort to give those guys some designated drivers and make sure they get back to the livery safe. And this is going to be the last part of the slideshow. These are all new county zones. These are not FWC state zones, but I just wanted to put this out here. That way everybody's aware of the new zones, and you can make sure you're briefing your customers where they need to slow down at. You go to the next slide. Oh, it's upside down. All right, so basically what we did is we just drew a line exactly where the state zone is. And obviously, as you guys can tell, on the right-hand side, that's going to be the further east side of Marlar Park over there. That zone was in place, you know, last year before the boating season started. And obviously, the one on that's on the east side. The one on the west side is basically the signs are still where they were. They just corrected them, lined them up, and you know, put new signs up. So if you haven't briefed your customers on that last year, make sure you guys start doing that this year and let them know. Because as before, pretty much right by the little boat basin right there, by the Gulf is where the zone used to end. Now it got pushed, you know, way past Marlar Park. We did an educational approach on that last year, and it seemed like people were starting to catch on, and we did start writing some citations as time went on. But make sure you're putting that out there. All right, next slide. So these are new. I noticed these toward the end of the summertime last year when we was out on the boat. Essentially what they did is for Marlar Park, there's a county ordinance there that introduced this slow speed zone, and there's one for the boat basin there on the other side. Due to how narrow the sound is right there, basically these zones overlapped each other. So if you're out there on the waterway, you're going to look at it, and as you see on the left-hand side of the screen, that's where the signs are going to be. So essentially, as you were going westbound, there was a resume normal operation sign. There was 3 of them there. Basically, they took those signs off, and they just put slow speed minimum wake on there because now the state zone continues over into the county ordinance slow speed zone as well that covers Marlar Park and the boat basin. So that's just something for you guys to be aware of. Make sure you're putting that out there, and you're familiar yourself with the new zones that are in this year. Next. So this is kind of an overview. On the right-hand side, please ignore this. This is an older map. It doesn't show where it extends out past Marler Park, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys were able to see the fuel dock. We get a lot of complaints from the owner over there, from some of the deliveries running out of there. They come through there and they blow that zone wide open, transit and sound. They call us all the time and pretty much begging us to come over there. So we're trying to show an increased effort over there and help those guys deal with some of those violations. And a new zone that also went in, another slow speed minimum wake, is down there at Eliza Jackson Park. All those signs are up. It's easily visible, but it's something that they did put in last year. So if you guys aren't aware of that. And okay.
Under this common violations, the attestation form, another violation that I did encounter last year was the renter was signing it and noting each box, but the instructor was not. And it was like multiple forms at the livery. So just make sure you're briefing the renter's signing it, and then the instructor, if you want to just go through it, the renter signs them, and then you go over it, and then you sign them, but it has to be signed. Okay? So.
All right. Thank you. Hey, we have a few questions for you guys that have come in, if you guys wouldn't mind. Do boating clubs or bareboats count as a livery?
All right, I'll take this one. So the boating club. All right, so again, we don't define what a bareboat charter is. If you read the definition of a livery and you fall within the definition, you're going to be a livery. I don't know how straightforward to put it other than that, but that's what we look at it. So no matter what kind of business you're running, whether you have a crew, captain, no captain, somebody you call off a sheet, we look at the definition, we reference that, we see what kind of operation you got going on, and do you fall under that definition or do you not? All the boating clubs that I know of are going to fall under the definition of a livery due to the fact of how they operate, right? So they have the boats, you pay the fee, you come in and you take somebody else's boat out for compensation, and they don't offer a captain or a crew. That's going to fall under the definition of a livery. There are a couple exemptions in there. I don't know exactly what they read. Yeah, just pull up that real quick about what's not a livery.
Right. It's going to be that one, right? A rented vessel,
Yeah, so a rented vessel obviously provide a captain, crew, or any type of staff, personnel to operate, oversee, maintain, or manage. That's not a livery. Most boat clubs do not do that. And then, the other one, the public or private schools. So those are the only exemptions really that's going to fall in there, and most boat clubs are going to fall under the definition of livery.
Okay, we have a quick one here. You guys might know. How much is the fine for speeding within 300 feet of an official boat with blue lights on? You guys know the fine?
That's going to be a $140 penalty.
And do you guys accept out-of-state boater's license?
We do. Yeah, there's really no state that we won't accept a out-of-state boater license from.
We got one question on the under 18 thing. If parents sign the contract, parents on the water with the parents, 16 or 17-year-old can drive with boater's license. Is that correct?
Run that by me one more time.
So if the parents sign the contract, the parents are on board, the 16 or 17-year-old has a boater's license. Is that legit?
Yes, if the 16 or 17-year-old has a boater license, that is legit. And also, they would be, let's say if the child didn't have a boating license and the parent would be exempt, let's say they're born, before January 1st, 1988, then they could also manage, oversee the child operating the vessel, and they would be exempt in that aspect as well.
Okay. When an accident does occur over $2,000, does the driver need to stay until FWC shows up?
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want you guys to get into fighting somebody out there on the dock to keep them there at the scene, but through a verbal conversation, just say, hey, there's some paperwork that needs to be done. FWC is on the way. We got to file a report. The same thing as a traffic crash. You're required by law to stay on scene. I mean, it's great for you guys to tell them that. If they choose to leave at that point and we can track them down, we're going to deal with them on the criminal aspect of that. But we don't want you guys out there trying to hog tie somebody to the dock because they're trying to get away from there. It happens all the time. We show up and they're like, yeah, the guy just took off running and jumped in his car. I mean, we're pretty much used to it. It's not the first time it's happened to us, but you guys just do what you can do to try to keep them there if it's safe and feasible for y'all.
We got one individual that said their livery permit was issued last year and has a 2025 as the expiration date. Does that mean it's still active without a renewal this year? Maybe they paid for 2 years at once, or I don't know.
From the way that I understand it, whoever fills out the application is valid from 1 year from basically your date of birth. Now, yeah, I mean, I don't work in Tallahassee, so don't quote me on that one. We'll let Nick
So
know.
when this has come up recently, so when the permits first start getting issued, we'd have folks that their date of birth was a couple months down the road. So instead of just having it valid for a short time, this was before my time, they were issued with a longer date. As long as the permit that's issued to you has that expiration date, that's when your expiration date is going to be. So if it says 2025 on there, if that's what it is, you're good till then. Just know that once that date, you can submit your paperwork early and renew it early if you wish. It just won't become active, obviously, until that new date. But yeah, there are a few of them out there that have a longer than a year window, kind of for this introduction beginning phase.
We're going to take one more, and I know there's some other questions out there. You guys, when we do intermission or afterwards, they have a table. You guys can ask them some questions. So we'll take one more. It says, if we terminate a rental due to a driver being under the influence or any unsafe behavior on the vessel and the renters don't want to return or get off the boat, what can be done? I guess they call you guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have that situation, we welcome those phone calls. We have no problem going out there and dealing with that. It'll either be somebody from FWC or somebody from the sheriff's office that's going to respond out there, possibly Coast Guard. But we want to get some law enforcement on scene, make contact, stop the vessel, and then obviously deal with whatever violations are observed when we make contact with them. So, yeah, that's not something you guys should be trying to go out there and, tie them up and bring them back to the dock. Just call us, and we'll send somebody out there and handle that for you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Get a big hand for FWC, guys. Well done. A lot of information there. Again, they're going to be out there in the hallway later on. Next up, U.S. Coast Guard. We have Senior Chief Menges, Lieutenant Nealis, and Lieutenant French. Come on up, guys.
Hey, good afternoon. My name's Senior Chief Joshua Menges. I'm the officer in charge, Coast Guard Station Destin. I arrived here this June. I, along with my team of 40 active and reserve members, are responsible for safety on the water from Navarre Beach to Powell Lake and 50 miles out. Our primary mission is search and rescue, law enforcement. We have 2 45-foot response boats that we can utilize in up to 10-foot seas, a 29-foot response boat, and then our brand new shallow water asset, 27-foot shallow water asset, which is really the ideal asset for our operations here in Destin. We work hand in hand with our local sheriff's office, FWC, fire department, and any number of our local, state, and federal partners to ensure safety on the water. This includes our emergency response, BUI, law enforcement, and charter operations. I brought along with me Lieutenant Nealis from MSD Panama City, who's going to talk about our charter regulations, and Lieutenant French from Sector Mobile, who's also going to talk about the Gulf Coast Illegal Charter Task Force that we initiated last year. I also have our all-volunteer Coast Guard Auxiliary here who are going to address just boater safety with us as well today. After they've had a chance to speak, we'll open it up to questions, and then whatever we don't get to will be available during the break as well. Just wanted to say before I turn it over, thank you for having us, and we look forward to serving the boating public and here in Destin. And I'm going to pass it over to Lieutenant Nealis.
Let's see. Do I just click into the?
Mike, do you have the, yeah, is this it?
Yep, that's it. All right, hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be with you here today. I am Lieutenant Andres Nealis. I'm the supervisor at Marine Safety Detachment, Panama City. We cover commercial vessel safety activities, among other things, from an area ranging from Perry to the Navarre Bridge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about different types of charter operations and how to discern what's legal and what's not. So without further ado. All right, so why is this important? Well, we know based on case experience that illegal charter operations are typically also in violation of other safety regulations. And so public safety is our number one concern, but also regulatory fairness, right? I mean, illegal operators, we just heard FWC speak about all the different regulations that the legitimate operators have to comply with, and there are also federal regulations that they may have to comply with. And so having illegal operators out there puts legitimate operators at a competitive disadvantage. And so we strive to, through our enforcement efforts, to maintain a level playing field. All right, so we're gonna basically go through some basic definitions of what a bareboat charter is, what's commonly known as a six-pack or a uninspected passenger vessel, and explain different reporting procedures, and we're going to go through our guidance on implementing the regulations and what's called the compliance matrix. All right, actually I'm going to skip this slide for a second. So I'll start with the definition of a small passenger vessel. Okay, so the Passenger Vessel Safety Act of 1993 was codified in 46 United States Code and defines a small passenger vessel as a vessel of less than 100 gross tons, carrying more than 6 passengers, including at least 1 passenger for hire. That's an important point. That is chartered with the crew provided or specified by the owner or owner's representative and carrying more than 6, or that is chartered with no crew provider specified by the owner and carrying more than 12. So when we talk about the 6-pack, or we talk about the 12 that are allowed on a bareboat charter, that's where the 6 and the 12 comes from. Essentially, in defining what a small passenger vessel isn't, that's how we get to what a uninspected passenger vessel is, or what a bareboat charter is. So here's the definition of a passenger, individual carried on a vessel, but that is not the owner or individual representative of the owner, or in the case of a vessel under charter, an individual charterer or individual representative of the charterer. The master is not a passenger, and neither are any legitimate crew members who have not contributed consideration who are actually paid for onboard services. Passenger for hire means a passenger for whom consideration is contributed as a condition of carriage on the vessel, whether directly or indirectly, flowing to the owner, charter, operator, agent, or any other person having interest in the vessel. So the condition of carriage here is very, very important to understand, as well as consideration. Consideration is defined as a means, is defined as an economic benefit, inducement, right, profit, including pecuniary payment accruing to an individual person or entity, but not including volunteer sharing of the actual expenses of the voyage by monetary contribution or donation of fuel, food, beverage, or other supplies. So the voluntary there is kind of it's the opposite of condition of carriage in this definition. All right, that brings us to the Navigation and Inspection Circular 794. So this is guidance that came out after the passage of the Passenger Vessel Safety Act of '93. This is guidance that the Coast Guard received for how we were going to implement the new regulations. Okay, so just out of curiosity, how many operators, charter operators here, have ever looked at NAVIC 794? Just a quick show of hands. Okay. And how many have not looked at NAVIC 794? Okay. All right, so this is available on Google. Like we're not hiding the how we implement or how we interpret the regulations, right? So I would encourage every single charter operator out there that hasn't looked at this, or even if you have, to revisit it prior to the start of your season, okay? Because this is essentially telling us how we're gonna implement the regulations that govern your commercial activities. This is good for you to know. So this matrix can get a little confusing. You basically wanna ignore the below that double line. That part is for vessels over 100 gross tons. I'm guessing there are no charter vessels under 100 gross tons that are not inspected. If there are, we can talk one-on-one about that. So we're looking at vessels under 100 gross tons, not over 100 gross tons. So in that top line, that's basically your compliance matrix for your 6-packs, okay? Under 100 gross tons, 6 or less passengers with at least 1 for hire, right? And then you look over and basically they're UPV at that point. In the third row is your bareboat charter, okay? So presumably more than 6, technically you could have less than 7 and it'd still be a bareboat charter, but presumably more than 6. And then if you look at all the way at the last column, right, with a charter in place, an agreement in place, and without a crew provided, that gets you to be treated as a recreational vessel. So a bareboat charter is essentially a recreational vessel under the regulations. But if the crew is provided under the charter, then you have to be inspected. You're an SPV, a small passenger vessel. Okay, so you basically, you have to live in the third row, in the far right column. That's what you have to meet. All right, so these are some indicators of a true bareboat charter. First of all, the bareboat charter agreement should be available in writing when we come and do boardings. And the reason I want to share these with you is because I want to help you make it easy for us to discern when we're doing boardings whether or not a charter is legitimate, right? Whether or not you're operating legitimately. So number one, have the charter agreement readily available when we come on board. Okay, second part is the charter must have the option of selecting or paying the master slash crew. And really, I mean, we don't run into a situation where there's crew other than the master. Most of the time we're dealing with, under 20-foot pontoon boats that realistically just need a captain. So this isn't a requirement, but I would make it as a recommendation. If you have the list of recommendations on the charter agreement, when we come on board and we can see where the list was, and maybe we can see where the charterer circled the captain that they selected, and maybe they initialed next to that, that's a pretty good indicator to us that the charterer had a legitimate choice of captain and that they made that choice prior to the start of the voyage. Another thing is that the master should be paid by the charterer. So again, another thing that can make it easy for us, again, not a requirement to have this on board, but if you have the proof of payment between charterer and master, then that, again, is a pretty good indicator to us that this is likely a legitimate charter. Some stipulation in the charter agreement should say that the charterer can fire the master or the crew, right? This is a true bareboat. They're provided the vessel and they're responsible with crewing that vessel, and so they should have the right to hire or fire as they choose. And that there are no more than 12 passengers on board. Now going back to the definitions, the definition of passenger does not include the charter, right? So I get this question a lot, well, hey, there's a boat out there and they've got 13 people on board, plus the captain, right? So you can have the charterer and you can have 12 friends of the charterer, and you can have the captain that they hired out, and you can have, at that point, 14 total persons on board, and provided they're meeting all other requirements, that could be a legitimate charter, right? So it's not necessarily an illegal charter just based on the number of people that they have in that scenario. All right, let's see. Okay, and this is talking about your 6-packs, right? So for those, it's a little bit less nuanced. It's a little bit more black and white. Masters should have a merchant mariner credential with at least an OUPV endorsement. If the vessel is over 5 net tons, it should have a valid certificate of documentation on board. Master and any crew members should be enrolled in a drug and alcohol testing program. And that's, I would say, one of the more common violations that we find with a six-pack, other than having too many passengers, would be not being able to have demonstrate proof of enrollment in a drug and alcohol program. Again, no more than 6. If you're over 100 gross tons, no more than 12. Again, we can speak about that one-on-one. Okay, so just wanted to list a few frequently asked questions, and maybe this is a question that you have right now, and I'll jump the gun and get to it. So, bareboat charter captain, are they required to have a license, or are they required not to have a license? I actually got that question. So the answer is they may or may not, right? We saw in the compliance matrix that a bareboat charter is essentially treated as a recreational vessel, so they're not required to have a U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain, right, notwithstanding other state and local regulations. And if they do, they're not really operating under the authority of that credential. Can a charterer list members of their group as crew for the charter trip? And the answer is definitely not. So a legitimate crew member is someone that's paid for onboard services by the charter. We've gotten this question a few times, and really, if we see a bareboat charter on a small pontoon and they've got like 16 people on board, and they're going to try to claim that, you know, a few of those passengers are actually crew members, we're gonna pick up on that. Definitely going to have to ask a lot of questions about, okay, you know, how did you hire these people, and what are they hired for, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a definite no on that one. And can a vessel be used for both UPV voyages and bareboat charter voyages? The answer is yes. Again, notwithstanding any local regulations around that, but just from the Coast Guard standpoint, yes, they can. You just have to be very intentional about applying, you know, meeting the requirements for either a UPV or a bareboat charter, depending on the voyage, right? For that voyage, what kind of vessel are they going to act as? Okay, so the enforcement of this is really a massive joint effort, and we all play a part in that, and you, the operators, play a role in that as well. And Lieutenant French is going to touch a lot more about how the different agencies have been able to interoperate very well in tackling this problem. But if you have a suspected illegal charter operation that you'd like to report, I've put up the Sector Mobile Command Center. Just depending on the urgency of it, I mean, if you see like a clearly unsafe situation, you can call the command center. They'll probably get in touch with Station Destin. If there's something else that you'd like to report, you can still call them. They'll probably forward the case to either the Sector Mobile investigating officers or myself. If you want to get in touch with me directly, there's my phone number and email address. And I just ask that if you have reason to suspect that there is an illegal operation going on, that you please be able to articulate why you feel that it is. And again, you know, having 14 people on board is not necessarily, you know, an illegal operation. But if you know something else is going on, pictures are great. You know, it gives us something to work with besides just a kind of a vague description of a craft or charter captain, that sort of thing. So. The more you can document and articulate, the easier it is for us to actually act on that, because we're gonna act on the good tips first, because that gives us more actionable information. So that's pretty much all I have. I'll forward it to Lieutenant French. He's going to talk about the illegal charter task force, and then we'll take questions at the end.
Perfect. As they're queuing it up, Lieutenant Josh French, let me first say what a pleasure it is to be here. So I work an area of responsibility that spans from basically Biloxi, Mississippi, all the way over to Apalachicola. And so this area, trust me, is my favorite spot. I work as an investigating officer, as Lieutenant Nealis mentioned, out of Sector Mobile. But again, we work cases along the entirety of about 435 miles of coastline, all the way up through pretty much the entirety of the state of Alabama. I do want to take a second and just point out my leadership. We have Commander Tom Gibson, he's the prevention department head over here waving his hands. We also have Mr. Israel Parker, he is the chief of investigation. So, and then my successor, Lieutenant Dean Epps. So I say all that to say all of your difficult questions, please direct them to that table specifically, mostly kidding. So again, what a pleasure it is to be here. GCIC Task Force, you'll see created there back in November of 2022. So I reported to Sector Mobile the summer of 2021, didn't know what a charter was. Part of the tasking I got from my leadership was, hey, we have this issue with something called an illegal charter, and we want you to try to take care of it. And so I was an aviator in my previous life, I'll say. And so I went on the water with some of our stations and figured out I had no idea what I was doing. And so I had to gain some street cred, get on plenty of boardings, and then I quickly realized what a massive problem this AOR has with illegal charters, okay? Now, it runs the gamut, okay? We have giant yachts that run illegal charter operations, all the way down to broken down bareboats, or pontoons, rather, that run illegal charter operations. And so it's kind of funny. It also pervades illegal activity. So we've stopped vessels with copious amounts of drugs. We've stopped vessels where the operator was drunk. We've stopped vessels where the operator was high on drugs. And so we see the very negative side of illegal charter operations. Now, part of our duty, part of the tip of the spear, as they might say, is that we have a duty to educate. Now, one thing I will promise you in this briefing, I'm not going to give you any more definitions. It's going to mostly be pictures for everybody. So, next slide, please. I guess I got the pointer. Boom. Motor vessel stimulus money, Hudson River, July 2022. Does that ring a bell for anybody? Anybody know about this case? Oh, we're good. We got one. Okay, operator took a vessel out. This gentleman is not credentialed. He is not enrolled in drug and alcohol testing. Max capacity for that vessel you see being pulled out of the water by the Army Corps of Engineers is 12. They had 13. So an overloaded vessel, sightseeing in New York. You can watch this online, actually. It's very unfortunate, I'll say. You can watch the videos online. So vessel takes 12 passengers, 13 total on the vessel. They get underway. Owner of the company is on a jet ski trailing this vessel. Vessel impacts 3 large waves. Most of the people are ejected from the vessel. So you can see in the picture here, perfect, pointer works. Ferry pulls up there in New York, and they're rescuing these people, all family members from Colombia. And you can read this news story online. What you don't see are 50-year-old Maria Vasquez and 7-year-old Julian Vasquez trapped underneath this vessel. Unfortunately, both of them perished from this accident. That is an illegal charter. That is what we are trying to prevent. And again, we haven't had an incident that bad, but very close, I'll say, within our area of responsibility, just in the last 2 years. So very important mission. That's why we create this task force. So the problem set, this problem is not just here in our AOR, it spans the entirety of the nation. We've had many meetings with upper leadership within the Coast Guard to try to combat this problem. So those are just news clippings I pulled a couple days ago of illegal charter operations. Very surprising places. Chicago's a big one. Miami's, of course, a big one. Jacksonville, New York, San Diego, Houston, and of course here within the Sector Mobile's area of responsibility. So that's a problem set. Our mission. So I put our mission statement up there. Here's the thing. It's really not a ingenious concept, really. We're just trying to bolster communication. Everybody wants the same thing. We didn't all get in the same room. So what do? We put our heads together and said, let's create a task force wherein we meet quarterly and discuss issues, but really just build those lines of communication. That way, when I'm not on the water, when I'm stuck in the office doing casework for hours on end, I can reach out to Mississippi, I can reach out to FWC, I can reach out to Okaloosa, I can reach out to DEA. There are some names on there that you might be surprised. DEA, why are you guys working with the DEA on illegal charter operations? Why are you working with Border Patrol? Again, illegal activity pervades these operations. We have stopped vessels with copious amounts of methamphetamine and worked a case with the DEA. Same thing with Border Patrol and, you know, a litany of other law enforcement agencies. All right, what's our battle rhythm? What's it kind of look like? Again, it's not super detailed. We try to meet quarterly, if able, I'll say. Surge operations, we ran 8 operations just this year. Previous year, I think we ran one operation. You're going to kind of see the numbers and how those numbers jumped up for us, which I think is going to be a benefit in the long run. Media involvement, you'll see we did a media day. Press releases are big for us as well to get the word out. You know, when we talk about the piece of education, it's not so much educating industry, educating experts, but we also have to educate the unsuspecting passenger, the people from Kentucky, from Texas, or, you know, from wherever. Open house, town hall meetings, sort of like this forum here. I'll say I've talked to many law enforcement professionals. I've given many speeches to law enforcement professionals. This is probably the first time I've talked about the task force in front of a group like this, so it's an awesome opportunity. Monthly unit visits, that kind of varies, and so if you guys see this picture here, again, pulled from the internet, this is our AOR, right? So it's pretty large. My office is there in Mobile, and we have, I think, 6 separate stations within our AOR that we try to visit. We try to train the boat crew members, but then also with the task force, the other reason why we created it is we train members of the task force on what to detect, what to collect in terms of evidence that might help our cases. There's a picture there of the media day back in May, which was successful for us in just getting the word out prior to the boating season really picking up. What we also do, if you guys just Google legal charters, I think we have an auxiliary, awesome, Mr. Mike Cox created an entire web page. I think it's like the #1, if you just Google legal charters, it's the #1 web page that'll pop up. Tons of great information, tons of great contact information as well if you have some of those more detailed questions. Year-end recap, notifications, 100+. Look, it was like 1,000+ when I first got here. We were just inundated, could not even keep up with it. Boardings, 100+, probably far exceeds that. But remember, boardings are not just illegal charter specific. We look for a whole litany of other safety items as well. Terminations, a 400% increase in voyage terminations, as well as the number of civil cases that we pushed up. We see a large increase. Agency assist, this is why we created the task force. I'm not on the water every day. I'm lucky if I get out once a month. And so 80% of our cases that we pushed up civilly, that is, came from other agencies. Hey, I stopped this vessel. I got proof of this agreement. I got a witness statement here. I got pictures of this. Takes it up. That's enough for us. We go by the preponderance of the evidence, 51%, which we've been successful in, my understanding, every single case that we kind of pursued. First level criminal referral, okay? This is for the most egregious operators that do not want to come to compliance. So if your vessel is stopped and we determine it to be an illegal charter, you may get what's called a captain's port order. Now there are appeal procedures for this captain's port order, but let's say that you legitimately were an illegal charter operator. You get this captain's port order, very serious document. Violation of that captain's port order, heavy fines, also felony. So we had an operator that violated the captain's port order multiple times, lied to law enforcement, and he's looking at a litany of felonies, all because he didn't want to come to compliance. That's, again, a worst case scenario. And reporting procedures, I'm about to close out here, but just harping on it. Look, that's our command center number there. Here's how I would just ask you to do this. If you have something immediate where you're on the water and you're like, there's this vessel again with 16 people, you're telling me I got to stick at 6 to be a UPV operator, this guy's carrying 16, not fair. Totally get it. If it's immediate, call the command center. That's the number on the left there. Okay? They'll put you in touch directly with an investigating officer who's on duty 24/7. They should be able to answer your questions. We'll get a vessel out there. If it's not immediate, CJIS tips, you can Google it. You can scan the QR code. Hopefully it works. On these CJIS tips, of which we get inundated with these CJIS tips, most of them we can't do anything with. I need a picture of the vessel. I need or a whole number. I need something legitimate. We're not just going to go busting down doors on every single tip unless we think they're legitimate. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Nice, guys. Thanks. We have a few questions, mostly about bareboat charters. If you wouldn't mind, that's your. There we go. Oh, you're good. Let's see. Could you explain the insurance regulations for bareboat charters? Does the charter have to pay the insurance separately?
That's not really something we get into. I think that's more of an FWC question.
Okay. And somebody just wanted some clarification on the numbers. So just to be clear, for a bareboat charter, you can have 15 people. The charterer, 12 of their friends, the captain and the mate for a total of 15. Is that correct?
All right, again, so that, yes, that could work, but captain and mate have to be hired by the charterer. You know, it has to be a legitimate captain and mate. Can't just hire the captain and then the mate gets assigned. You know, vessel capacity is another thing, right? Is the vessel actually big enough to operate safely with that many people on board? Do you have enough life jackets? So provided that all of those things are being met, yes, you can have 12 passengers plus the charterer plus crew.
All right, we got a couple more. Per the chart that you displayed earlier, if you're renting your vessel to a charterer and you provide the crew who is paid by the charterer, you qualify as an SPV, and is that considered a bareboat?
Let's see. So the crew is paid for by the charterer, but so the crew can't be provided by the owner, right? Like, it depends on what we mean by provided by the owner. Did the charterer get to select the crew, right? Maybe you made some recommendations as the owner, but ultimately the crew is selected by the charterer, and that's really the distinction that has to be made. That's where we get hung up, right? So I guess I would maybe rephrase the question, but I would say that as long as the charterer got to select the crew, then it's, you know, likely a legal operation.
All right, we'll do one more, and then anything else you guys can reach out to them at their table. This person says, my understanding is that a bareboat charter company is not required to maintain a list of captains for a charter to pick from. A list of one is allowed as long as the charter has the ability to select their own?
Yeah, great question. So I've gotten this question before when it comes to a list. What do you mean a list? Is two a list? Is one a list? Does it have to be on paper? Here's the thing. We look at the law, right? We look at the code, then we look at the CFR, and that's what we have to go off. Everything else is guidance. It is not law. So if I bring forth a case, a civil case that is, and a criminal case, I'll say, I have to refer to the law. Now, there's this wide open space that allows for interpretation. And I'll, you know, be a good government employee and not give my personal view on that, I'll say, but it can apply difficulty. You know, one of the things that my colleagues down in Jacksonville will mention is once you've seen one bareboat charter, you've seen one bareboat charter, because every single one is different. And so when it comes to an operation in the entirety, when it comes to this question of is one enough, does it have to be on paper, we don't look at one factor, right? We might step on board and it's like, hey, there's not the list on the piece of paper, right? Well, that doesn't make you an illegal charter, okay? We have to look at the totality of the circumstance. We have to look at it holistically. There are a lot of pieces that go to this, and it's actually, from the law enforcement side, can be very difficult because you're stepping on board a vessel. Maybe there's a wake. Maybe there's a bunch of drunk passengers. Maybe some people are lying to you. Maybe they're not. You don't really know. You have to decipher it very quickly, take what you got, and then move forward with it. And so, again, we've been successful in every single one of our cases, and so we're not out there just picking apart everybody that looks or could be an illegal charter operator. To answer that question is difficult because we don't just look at that one factor. But, you know, a list technically, yeah, would be more than one. Is it required by law, if we're talking about the law, to be on paper? No, it's not. But again, we look at the totality of your operation, which again, everyone seems to be different.
Okay, good questions, everybody. Give it up for the Coast Guard, y'all. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We're going to take a short 10-minute break, get some snacks. The snacks are for sale out there. You could check out the boats, go to the bathroom. We're going to come back, and there's a special presentation from Trip Shock. How many minutes? 30 minutes? Did I? Just to clarify, it's a 30-minute break, but in 15 minutes, we're going to have a presentation from Trip Shock. So, see you in a bit.
All right, how is everyone doing today? Pretty good. I know it's intermission. You guys can still talk. You like to listen, then I think you'd want to, because we're going to talk about how to make a little bit more money in your business. Well, maybe a lot more. So just a little bit about myself. My name's Greg Fisher. I have about 15 years experience in water sport marketing. You might know me as the Trip Shock CEO, but over the past few years, I've transitioned my roles mainly as the CEO of WaveRes. We're a reservation management software. I'm a founding member of and past president of the Okaloosa Water Sport Coalition. I host a podcast called the Awkward Water Sport Guys with the most awkward person in the world, Kevin O'Neill. And also we operate a group of 1,400 water sport operators on Facebook. If you just look for water sport and boat tour operators, we talk about everything from safety, marketing, running a business, but you'll find it very helpful if you need help asking questions about your business. Let's talk about add-ons, because I think that this is one of the most overlooked things in water sport businesses. We're also used to, when you think of add-ons, we think of just traditional things, such as your t-shirts or snacks or things like that, but we can go much more deeper and in depth with your business and also create opportunities to generate ancillary revenue. So we have some issues with traditional add-ons, right? So there's upfront costs to purchasing merchandise. It disrupts your check-in procedure and checkout procedure. You have lack of personnel, theft and waste of merchandise, and inadequate storage and display of merchandise. Because many of you have just very small spaces to actually sell add-ons. So not to say you shouldn't do it. I highly recommend you should sell t-shirts because it's a great way to generate revenue, but for a lot of us, it's a lot more difficult than it seems. So the solution is to create service-based add-ons. And just to kind of define what a service-based add-on is, first, a service-based add-on enhances the guest experience by providing additional flexibility and customization. Service-based add-ons typically come with little to no upfront costs and are very profitable. Profitable being the key word here. So here are my list of the top 5. And there's a lot more that I can provide if you want to talk after. But these are the top 5 that I think can change your business today. So, just show of hands, how many people use damage protection? A couple? Okay. So damage protection allows the guest to pay an additional fee to waive any damages that may cause during the duration of the rental. Now let me just make it clear. There are companies that offer, third-party companies that offer damage protection. You do not have to use these companies. You can do this yourself, and if you have a reservation software you use, which I'm sure most of you do, you can create an option easily in there. Now, I'm not going to go into specifics on how to create these options. This is something you can ask, or get on our Facebook group and ask me after this, but most of these are very simple to add on, and just some of the reasons why I love damage protection, guests have the peace of mind that minor damage will be covered in the event of an incident. Operators see a significant upside on the breakage. Damage protection can be capped if equipment is totaled. It's very, very simple to implement. So how do we implement? First, you want to decide how much you'd like to charge and what that max damage amount the protection covers. In your reservation software, create an option so the guest can add in the order during checkout. And when the guest arrives to check in, take it a step further and ask them to sign a waiver to confirm they have declined the protection. This is a way to kind of make them second guess, potentially purchase it. And a pro tip I have here, you can increase conversion by requiring the guest to either leave a cash deposit or purchase the damage protection. So don't give them an option just to say no to it. Say, hey, if you say no to it, then you got to give us a $500 cash deposit. If the damage protection is $50, they're likely going to do the $50 instead of giving you $500 in cash. So just an idea of how much this add-on can generate. Let's just take 10 boats, for example, at $75 damage protection per rental, take rate of 30%, which is right about what we've seen in our data. That's $40,500 in net revenue from damage protection on 10 boats. Now, some of you have a lot more than 10 boats. Do the math. It's big dollars. And this can be implemented literally within 5 minutes in your reservation software. So number 2 is trip protection. Now, trip protection can be applied no matter if you're a rental or a tour operator. Trip protection allows the guest to pay an additional fee for a more favorable cancellation policy. The guest would essentially be able to cancel last minute and receive a full refund minus the trip protection fee. And why we love this, guests have the peace of mind that they can cancel for any reason due to a last minute change to their plans. It reduces chargebacks. Operators see a significant upside on the breakage, just like damage protection. Protection can be customized based on product type. Again, very simple to implement, very similar to damage protection. So let's just take an example. So we have 10 boats, $30 average trip protection cost per rental, take rate of 20%. You're looking at a net revenue of $9,000 after claims. Now, that 25% claim number, that's how many people will cancel last minute, and basically you lose that revenue. Again, we're working on breakage, and there are companies that do this exact same thing that want to take that breakage from you. You do not have to give it to them. You can implement this yourself in 5 minutes. Number 3 is online boaters test. How many of you know that you can, instead of the paper test, you can do digital boaters test, and not only is it more convenient, but you can earn a commission. How many people actually know that you can earn a commission on your online boaters test? A few. So why I love this is, obviously guests can take it prior. So it will alleviate your check-in process. You can generate additional revenue by simply adding a link to your confirmation emails and text messages. There's zero cost to participate in this program. Again, very easy to implement. I just want to give a shout out, Kevin O'Neill, Take My Boat Test. Kevin, you stand up for a second? Kevin just launched his online boaters test. He's one of the few companies in the state of Florida that offer this, and he offers also the highest commissions on the digital boaters test. So after I get in, if you have not signed up with the online boaters test, or you're currently using someone else that's not giving you the commission, just scan his back and get started. In your reservation software, again, you just add a link to the boaters test in the confirmation email and text message. It's really easy. And just a pro tip here, you can double your conversions by including a link to the boaters test in the confirmation text. So make sure you add that link to the text message. That's how you're going to get the most conversions. So just an example here, 10 rental boats, average of $5 per rental with a take rate of 40%. You're looking at $4,000 a year. Number 4, I'm gonna kind of put my TripShock hat on here, because a lot of operators here that you don't have to work with our company, you can still tap into our affiliate program and earn commissions up to 10 to 15% for selling local tours in our area. So why we love this is expand your product offerings. When you're sold out, you have other products that you can sell. There's hundreds of options to choose from. You can generate additional revenue by just simply adding links to your confirmation emails, or as the guest is leaving, you can give them your affiliate link where they can book different excursions, and there's zero cost to participate. So it's real simple to sign up, free to sign up for the TripShock affiliate program, affiliates.tripshock.com. Once you set up your profile, you can grab your affiliate link and incorporate it in all your communication. I saw some businesses that actually added a QR code to their check-in booth, where people would leave, they would scan the QR code, and then they can start booking other experiences and earn commission. So just an idea here, you can get, if you book 100 tours through the affiliate program at a affiliate commission around $40 per booking, it's an extra $10,000 a year that your business can generate. Now this last one more applies to your crew and also owner-operators, but we had, in our Facebook group, we had a discussion about pre-tipping or tipping during checkout. And there's a lot of opinions on whether or not you should allow guests to tip before they actually take part in the tour. But there's a lot of responses from operators that, at least from people that have used WaveRes, have said that this has increased their tips for their crews fairly substantially. Not just more tips, but bigger tips. And the people sometimes leave tip after they do it anyway, so kind of they get tip on top of tip. But why we love this is tipping is often a pain point for guests. A lot of people don't leave cash, and while they're making their reservation, you want to get them when they have the most money in their bank account. They have less money in their bank account if the pontoon rental is the last thing they do, or the dolphin tour is the last thing they do on their trip. So getting them early and getting them the tip beforehand is helpful. Credit card tips are a hassle, we know that. And it's very easy to implement for most reservation systems, just having a simple pre-tipping module. So how to implement, you can check with your crew to understand the average tip amount from each rental. And your reservation software, add a percentage-based option in your checkout, so you can give options like 10, 15, 20%. Give the guests some choices, kind of like what you see when you go to a restaurant. They give you 3 different options, like 10, 15, whatever. John Stevens, I don't have any data. We added pre-tipping to WaveRes last year, so I don't have any data to compare it year over year. But I asked a handful of our operators before I came here, and John said it really has helped pretty substantially. So thank you, John, for the testimonial. So just to kind of wrap this up, the key takeaways: traditional add-ons are great, but many operators do not have the bandwidth to offer them. Operators leave thousands of dollars on the table each year by not providing or participating in these add-ons. Most service-based add-ons are very easy to implement with the right reservation software, and guests will appreciate these offerings, and your bottom line will too. So just to estimate all those add-ons, excluding the pre-tipping, that's $63,500 on 10 rental boats. And I know many of you have more than 10 boats, so that number is significant. And there's a lot more of these too. Just get in our Facebook group and we can discuss those. But I really appreciate you allowing me to do this presentation today. If there's anything that I can help you with your software needs, or just you need help with your business, any thoughts, feel free to reach out. And thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. We're gonna, in 5 minutes, we're gonna get going again, so we'll give a chance for everybody to come on back and find their seats. So, all right. I hope you guys had a chance to get some of those pretzels out there. I'm still munching on mine. The booths out there are pretty good. I hope you had a chance to check them out, and I hope you check them out after. There's some of the booths might win the award for best swag. The Okaloosa County Water Sport operators are looking pretty good, but the National Park Service does have some pretty good stuff too. And just so happens they're our next presenters. So we have Richard Devaney and Jennifer Watson from the National Park Service. Take it away, guys.
Is that the little clicker? Okay. And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for letting us come here today to talk to you real briefly. I'm going to make this really quick. We do have a lot of slides, but they're fairly simple and a lot of pictures. So just so everybody's aware, we get this question a lot. What is the National Seashore? What defines the boundary of the National Seashore? Essentially, the boundary in Florida is everything from the intercoastal waterway south to a mile out into the Gulf, from East Pass to Perdido Key. That is the boundary of the National Seashore in Florida. Now, our boundary also includes Fort Barrancas on board NAS Pensacola, as well as, 5 barrier islands? 5 barrier islands in Mississippi. Alabama skipped over. They didn't want to play, so we don't have any sites in Alabama, but we've got Mississippi and Florida. So everything in that water boundary is included in the boundary of the National Seashore. Okay, what we're talking about today is Crab Island overview, okay? It's real simple. Everybody here knows what Crab Island is, okay? When you describe it to people from outside, they can't believe it until we show them pictures of what it looks like on a holiday weekend. They are just shocked. In fact, we have an intern here with us that's from out of state. Wes showed her a couple of photos of what it looked like a couple of holidays last year. She was shocked at how busy it gets, okay? Real quick, we get this question all the time, okay? I'm going to give you the short answer on what is a CUA, okay? A CUA is a commercial use authorization. It is essentially the National Park Service version of a commercial permit, okay? It has to be for a commercial service. What that means is the company is gaining some type of benefit, whether financial or other benefit, from performing that service. And it has to be for our visitors. We have commercial entities that service the park. They do cleaning services, they provide vending machines, those kind of things, but those are for the park. That's not for the visitor. Those folks don't need a CUA, okay? We hear this a lot too, and people get confused because we have two types of commercial permits in the Park Service. One is a CUA. That's what affects everything at Crab Island. The other is a concessions contract. They are much larger documents. They're typically issued for about 10 years. And everybody has to compete for those, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about those in just a second. You know, everything else that's on there. The biggest thing is, if you are operating some type of business activity within the boundary of the National Seashore, you are required by law to have a CUA. If you don't have one, you can be cited for that, okay? We'll get to and just like the Coast Guard, we follow CFR regs as well because they're federal laws underneath Congress. This one confuses a lot of people. If you read the language of the law, there are two things mentioned, an in-park CUA or an out-of-park CUA. What's the difference? It's real simple. If you take your money inside the park, like a food vendor typically is the good example for that, you're an in-park CUA. Somebody like Destin Snorkel, all their business is conducted on shore in Destin. They don't take any money while they're in the boundary of the National Seashore. They're an out-of-park CUA, okay? There are a couple of things that may happen, and I'm not going to get into any specifics about what's going to happen in the future. We'll get to that in just a second. We've looked at possibly limiting CUAs, which means either limiting the numbers out there, like if we have, say, 6 food vendors, we may say, okay, we need 3. If that happens, it's going to be a competitive process, and it'll be announced by email. It'll also have to go into the Federal Register. Okay, you'll see a big announcement about that. The other way we would limit a CUA is by limiting the number of trips allowed per day, per month, per whatever. Okay, that's another way we'd do that. Real briefly, concessions versus CUA. A CUA, and we'll hit on the law here in just a second. In fact, I'm going to skip to that right now. We talk about why are CUAs needed at Crab Island. CUAs at Crab Island are no different than CUAs anywhere else in the National Seashore or the National Park Service service-wide, okay? We currently have 431 units, I think, nationwide. Every single one of them has the exact same law that governs how they issue a CUA, okay? It's the 1998 Commercial Services Improvement Act, and yes, I can cite the stupid title over and over again, okay? It's 54 U.S.C. 101-9225. What that is, that law, when you read it, it has a key word in it. I tell people, pay attention to the words in a law, okay? A lot of the laws that govern what the Park Service does say the Park Service may or the Park Service might. That means we have some discretion. This law, the word says the Park Service shall. No discretion whatsoever. We are required by law to do this. Okay, the reason I mention this is under that law, there are 2 levels of approval that we have to go through when we're thinking about approving a permit or a concessions contract. One is appropriate. There's a bunch of things listed up there. A CUA has to hit all of those to be approved. If it misses one, the answer is no, it's going to be denied. A concessions contract is something a little different. The park has to determine that the service is necessary for the park, and it only has to hit one of those 4 topics, okay? The difference between a concessions contract and a CUA. A concessions contract is a massive document, okay? We're writing a concessions prospectus right now to bid out the new concessions contract for our Mississippi ferry operation. Takes people out to Ship Island over in Mississippi. The prospectus itself will likely end up being something like 120 pages long, okay? That's the prospectus for companies to come back and bid on what they want to do with that operation. I can promise you, if Crab Island becomes a concession, if we determine that it is necessary and everything we're doing out there is appropriate, and we do determine that it's going to need to be a concession operation, this is going to be a big deal. It's going to go nationwide. We, by law, cannot restrict applications to only local vendors. That's against the law. It has to go nationwide. Last year, the Park Service issued something like 6,100 CUAs nationwide. Our park issued 135 of them, okay? A lot of them are at Crab Island. If we do go concessions, it may be 1 or 2 total, okay? Just because of the nature of those beasts. And I promise everybody, and I've told this to the county commissioners when I meet with them and the county admin folks, is because we have to advertise it nationwide, part of that prospectus is we have to tell these people what is the historical revenue generated at these sites and these operations. And I can tell you a company like Xanterra, who operates hotels at the Grand Canyon and Yosemite, they see that revenue stream, they're going to be bidding on it. I promise you they will, because they're not silly. They see money, they're going to be bidding on it. Now, all of that said, we may determine that none of this is required, and all of it goes bye-bye, okay? I don't know if you've heard or not, but Congressman Gates put an amendment in the National Park Service Appropriations Bill this year that says the Park Service may not implement any type of commercial services plan for Crab Island. If that happens, that 98 law comes into effect. That 98 law says if you make more than $25,000 as an in-park CUA, you are now cut off. That is the max limit allowed under a CUA for an in-park operation. Our commercial services plan was going to try and alter some of that, possibly changing the way things were done. If we can't implement that plan, that 98 law goes into effect and we have no discretion on how it gets implemented. We have to follow it. So things are going to change. How they're going to change, we don't know right now. We know why we do planning, okay? Park Service is big on 2 things, planning and acronyms, okay? We love our acronyms. A GMP is a general management plan. It is a massive document. Printed, it is literally about this thick, okay? I always tell everybody it's bigger than the Bible, okay? It is essentially the Park Service's Bible. It tells a superintendent of our park exactly how to operate. Every law, every regulation, everything that happens in that park is in that document. The park is split up into zones on how to manage operations. Currently at Crab Island, there are 2 zones. One is diverse, I always remember, I hate these things, dispersed recreation and seagrass beds. Now, does either one of those sound like what happens at Crab Island, especially dispersed recreation? So that's one of the problems we're running into with how things are going out there is currently those management plans don't follow with what's happening at Crab Island. I am definitely not reading that slide to you guys, okay? This is everything that you must submit to us to get a CUA for 2024. So the biggest one that I want to focus on there, and we had a conference call with our public health service Last week, I had to talk to the captain in charge of our public health service in our Washington office. It actually got to his desk. We require every food operation to submit a very detailed, it's 13 pages long, food and beverage addendum. Last year we got those reviewed by Public Health Service and then they let us proceed. This year the captain in Washington has flat said no food operation will occur without that document being signed off on by his office, which means it's going to take a minimum of 30 days to get those documents reviewed. If you're submitting an application for a CUA and it involves food, you better get it in soon, because we got to send all this stuff to Washington and it's going to take time. Okay? The other thing, that's the food and beverage addendum. Now, I just had a conversation out in the hallway about the first item on that list, no hot boxing. Public Health Service came to us and said they absolutely want no hot boxing going on out there. Our explanation was that the state allows it. The state of Florida permits it, okay? And there are food guidelines that have to be followed, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into all of those, okay? The biggest thing for that is what we've asked people to do is send us an email with details on how you plan on operating that. We will send them up to the captain in public health and let him make the call, okay? I think if we can show that people are following the regs, following the rules, that we can argue that this should still be allowed. Okay. Like I said, time. We are the federal government. We don't move fast. Okay. Things take time. And because it's got to go through our Washington office, it's going to take a minimum of 30 days to get those things reviewed. I think that's being generous, honestly. Okay. Real briefly, what might commercial services look like in the future? That's about where we are right now. I have no clue. Okay, I can't tell you what's going to happen. We've got so many things flying around right now, we don't know. Okay, all I can tell you is that these things are happening. Okay, right now CUAs have a 1-year max permit length. Crab Island CUAs are typically written from the beginning of March till the end of November. Okay, concessions contracts are 10-year documents. So you can see if it goes concessions, I don't have to do this but once every 10 years for reviewing a contract document. Okay? There's lots of requirements, there's lots of processes. The legal requirements are all laid out in that 98 law. Everything you want to know about commercial services and the National Park Service is in that law. Okay? It's real simple. The one thing that will change, that I'm sure will change, is everybody should have gotten an email from either me or Jen or our new CUA box, giving you that list of stuff that you had to do. In 2026, you'll no longer see those emails from us. And everybody's going, yay, no more bugging. Wrong. Now the system will be completely online. It will be through our Washington office. All permits must be approved by them. No longer will it be approved by the superintendent. They will all be approved by the Washington office, and your application fee will change from $100 to a minimum of $350. The likelihood is, I think, very much it's going to be higher than that. We have no control over this. This is being implemented nationwide. I think what happened is a park out west behaved poorly, and the superintendent got in trouble for issuing CUAs that they shouldn't have, or was managing the CUAs improperly. So now our Washington office has taken over all of it. Okay? So be prepared for that. We still don't know the specifics on it. So that tell you anything about how systems roll out. Okay. The planning process. Right now we are in the final stages of the environmental assessment for the Crab Island area. Unfortunately, because it involved a commercial services strategy planning document, we can't do anything with it until this Gates amendment to our appropriations bill gets sorted out. We're kind of hamstrung. So we cannot move forward with that planning process. We were notified about 2 weeks ago that our EA, typically when you start an environmental assessment, you have 1 year to finish it. From the minute that you get the legal start date, You have 1 year to finish it. Our end date is February 21st. Does anybody think we're going to make that date? No way on this planet. Because we don't have an appropriations bill yet. That bill hasn't been passed by Congress, and until that happens, we can't move forward with any of this. Final decisions on all of this will be made by our regional director or our Washington office. Given that this thing has gotten so political, I have a feeling my regional director is going to punt it and send it up to the Washington office. So we'll see what happens. So just so everybody knows, the reason that these guys are up here, Jen Watson is our new our concessions management specialist. She's going to be taking over the day-to-day management of CUAs because I have been poached by another park. I'm going to take over as the administrative officer for Catoctin up in northern Maryland, so I get to go play with the Secret Service at Camp David for 4 months. So, but I've been poached, so she's going to be handling the day-to-day. And then Wes Baker is our district law enforcement ranger, and he's got a couple of things he wants to add on that aren't in here. So, have at it.
Hey, good afternoon. I'll be really quick. Like Rich said, my name's Wes Baker. I'm the district supervisor for Gulf Islands National Seashore. So law enforcement emergency services from the Crab Island area, basically, all the way to Perdido Key. We've got a pretty small staff. We really try and supplement with local agencies. So I've been working with the Sheriff's Department for a few years. A lot of you guys have seen me out periodically throughout the summer, checking on some of the business management stuff that we do. One thing I just really wanted to touch briefly on, and I'm kind of just curious, I was asking the question earlier, when we talk about big planned events that come out to Crab Island, these like crazy weekends, these Crab Island takeover events, do you guys see negative impacts to those typically? Okay, right. Is there anybody that sees a positive impact to those? I'm going to guess very minimally. Yeah, like 2 hands. Okay, fair enough. All that being said, so the Park Services realize that these are things that go on. They create a lot of safety issues. They impact the businesses. They impact a lot of the day-to-day things that go on there. And a lot of times they're being planned and executed by groups that aren't even handled here locally. They're coming in from outside areas. They come in for the weekend. It's kind of a madhouse for a few days. The guys at the Sheriff's Department, FWC, the Coast Guard, they're running around trying to keep the chaos from more than just the normal chaos that's there on the weekend. So we've recognized that in the last few years. We've had a handful of meetings with the Sheriff's Department and sat down and talked about a handful of things. To get to the end of all of that, we're going to start being a lot more involved with those. The permit process that Rich just went through, these are organized, a lot of times paid events that fall under our requirements for permitting. So if these events are not permitted, then they're not going to be allowed. If they are, then we'll handle them, typically trying to get in front of them and get them stopped. We took a handful of cases last year. We took a couple of cases over some of the ones that happened in 2023, and we're ready to try and mitigate or manage any of the ones that come up. So a couple of things that you guys can do to help us. If you see those events start to pop up on social media, send that to the email box that they've got through the permit stuff. Communicate to the Sheriff's Department. Either way, as long as we all start getting the same info, then we'll start trying to manage them and getting ahead of them. And if they can go through the permit process and they're approved, then they'll be permitted. If you've got a business and you're working with any of these folks, if you're one of the businesses that's permitted through the park and you're operating outside of the scope of your business, so if you're permitted to sell t-shirts and hamburgers and ice cream or whatever it may be, and all of a sudden you partner up with another one of these groups and now you're throwing this big on-the-water rave that's nowhere near the scope of your permit's going to be suspended, and Rich and all the folks in our office are going to get together, and probably going to be some long-term consequences to your permit on that. So if there's things like that going on, communicate up to us, let us know so we can try and get ahead of it and manage it appropriately. And if for some reason these guys are reaching out to you, which some of the things that we've dealt with in the past, some of our investigations have kind of pointed towards some ideas that instead of them dealing directly with us, they're going to call up somebody who's already got an active permit and say, hey, instead of selling hamburgers and ice cream on Saturday, can we piggyback off of what you're doing and throw this big event? So we're managing it. We're trying to manage it. This is going to be a little bit more aggressive than what we've done in the past. So if you guys see stuff, feel free to communicate it back to us. Sheriff's Department, whoever you want to get the information there, I'll work closely with these guys, and we'll try and make these events a little bit more safe and see if they can work within the confines that we're trying to get them to manage in.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
One more thing. You heard me talk about the food safety things, and that our public health service folks have gotten really involved in this. One big change that we've recommended from this, and we've gotten the Public Health Service Office to draft up for us, is instead of if they come out or we get a food inspection from the state and you fail that food inspection, in prior years you were given time to rectify the situation and fix it and things like that. The guidance from our Washington office at this point is immediately suspend the permit, no activity whatsoever until all those things are rectified. And if they're drafting up what they would define as severe failure. If anybody gets a severe failure from the Public Health Service or the state of Florida food inspectors, your permit will be revoked. And if you don't know about driver's licenses, our permits are very similar. Suspended means, yeah, it's gone, but you can get it back. Revoked means you're never getting it again. So once you fail, you failed, and you're done forever. And what I tell people is, yeah, it sounds bad, and it is, because it will be enforced. If you fail and get a CUA revoked by us, you will not be able to get a CUA in any national park site nationwide, ever. It will be gone for good nationwide, okay? So we're stressing to people, focus on these things. Focus on food safety, restrooms, those kind of things. Okay, are there any questions?
We have some questions.
I figured.
This is all very informative, and I'm glad you guys are here. I think it does help clarify some things. So if you take money outside of the CUA area, but then go back in, let's see if I read that right, do you still have to have a CUA and pay the 3%?
Basically, yes, that's a fairly simple one. If your business operates at all within the boundary of the National Seashore, yes, you must have a CUA. That means if you start at a harbor in Destin and take people on a dolphin tour in through the inlet towards Fort Walton, if you're south of the intercoastal, you're in the National Seashore, so yes, you need a CUA from us. Absolutely.
So are bareboat charter companies required to have a CUA? And if you have a CUA, is it okay for the customers to pay the captain crew fees?
Okay. This is one where we get it a little bit into what's the difference. Our Washington office has basically defined a CUA requirement for charter boats, okay? We treat it like, think about Enterprise, renting a car. Somebody rents a car at the airport, drives into Fort Pickens area in National Seashore. Do we charge Enterprise a CUA fee for that? No. Same thing would go for rental vessels. If you are not providing a captain, we are not going to require a CUA. That's the difference. If you are basically renting a boat, handing the keys to a visitor, that's not a CUA to us. That's no different than somebody renting a car and driving it into the park. It's the same principle. If you are renting a boat, providing a captain, and doing a tour, yes, it requires a CUA. So that's the prime difference for us.
Okay, this probably comes up a lot. What's the difference between the National Park Service regulations, Okaloosa County regulations at Crab Island when it comes to commercial operating permits? Describe that relationship. And does the City of Destin have any jurisdiction or anything to do with Crab Island?
I leave all jurisdiction questions to this guy. That's why he's here.
So most of the areas of Gulf Islands National Seashore are concurrent jurisdiction, which means the state holds the same authority that the Park Service does. That's why in this part of the park you mostly see state and local agencies dealing with things. So if the counties or the cities, anybody who's got the local regulations, those are going to be applicable. And that's why we see these meetings where there's 5 or 6 different agencies that all overlap at Crab Island, and they're all working closely together. I know Rich's office works really closely with the county permitting office, and I know they're kind of working hand in hand. You've got to have one to get the other, and you've got to have the other to get the one, and so they go back and forth. I keep in contact with the deputies and the guys from the Sheriff's Department pretty regularly when things are going on out here, and so we've worked cases in the past where they've brought state charges against people, and we'll jump on board and throw federal charges for the things that are a little bit more applicable to what the Park Service is doing. But permitting business type stuff, you're going to have to make sure everybody's happy, and there might be,
a handful of folks that are trying to make sure you're jumping through the right hoops.
Multiple permits, yeah. And the city of Destin question, they don't have any, as far as I understand it.
Don't know for sure, but I would say probably not.
Yeah.
So I would.
I know they definitely put their input in.
They
so-
have, everybody has an input.
Right.
That's the joy of being in this country, is everybody can give their opinion, but I don't know if they have any jurisdiction
Gotcha.
out there.
Here's a scenario. This is one of the questions. It's
I
not
know
mine, I
it
promise. I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A. I'm going to buy 1,000 Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I'm going to go to Crab Island, sell them throughout the day. Is that considered hot boxing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. That's all we have for now. And if you guys have any other questions, you guys can reach out to him later.
Yep.
Rich, you're going to miss all these Crab Island questions up in Maryland.
But I get to deal with the Secret Service now, so
There you
I
go.
get more
Okay.
fun stuff. So.
Well, give them a round of applause, guys. Really appreciate you guys. Good presentation. Next up, the world famous Chris Mitchell from Okaloosa County. She's going to talk to us about the county's ordinance.
Wow, look at all the room we have. Like, really, look at all the room we have. Who was here last year? Raise your hand. Thank you for coming back. Stretch out, you deserve it. You could say that all this room is awesome. Has that caught on yet? I'm gonna keep trying. We'll just leave that there. Okay. So, since we've looked around the room and we know how much room we have now, close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to envision your perfect family vacation, wherever you're going, in the mountains or another beach vacation, and you feel the air on your face, whether it's cold or hot with a breeze. And the kids are smiling and happy. Of course, this is well after you've chased them around the room trying to put their shoes on all morning. So, now let's consider an unthinkable twist, something every parent fears when bliss turns to panic due to overlooked safety measures. And as Sergeant Corbett said earlier, Okaloosa County is continually ranked among FWC's top 10 counties for the most boating accidents per year. When you think in Florida, how many counties border the water? 35 coastal counties, so we're in the top 10. But if you think about Okaloosa County's population is approximately 216,000 versus Miami-Dade, who is also in the top 10, 2.6 million. So it's a pretty big gap. We have a lot of tourism here. Where's the clicker? And also a thank you to Sergeant Corbett for tackling the arrive on vacation, leave on probation. We're getting a handle on that. So that's why in April of 2022, Okaloosa County adopted the Waterway Rental Vendor Safety Ordinance, and that's what I will be talking to you about. The purpose of it is to regulate livery vessel rental vendors and operators in order to promote safety, encourage tourism, support responsible marine businesses, and also protect our natural resources. So who does this apply to? That's been a very large, common question. As the ordinance states, it includes all areas of Okaloosa County, including all public waters within the county, except where a city has jurisdiction and has a regulating ordinance, or where preempted by federal or state law. So, went too far. All livery vessels and personal watercraft offered for rent, lease, or consideration within Okaloosa County must be from a business location, which fully complies with the regulations in this article. You have to have a brick and mortar. It has to be from a business holding a valid permit, which is in this article as well. And all of the livery vessels and personal watercraft have to be registered in the name of that business, not a doing business as, and have valid Florida vessel permit number affixed to it. So the fees for this registration are listed here. I also forgot to mention, I have my card on the tables, and on the back of it is, you can scan the QR code and that'll take you specifically to the ordinance if you want to read more in depth. This is a very general overview. It would very much be death by PowerPoint if I went into everything, but that ordinance will get you all of the specifics. So registration is due by March 1st. Like I said, this was enacted in April of 2022. Last year was kind of a setup year. We have everything organized. If you are within the jurisdiction of Okaloosa County and the unincorporated areas doing business as a livery vendor, your registration is due by March 1st of this year. At this time, we're taking payment similarly to the Crab Island registration at the Shalimar office. So I believe we'll be taking care of that. We are working on a mobile payment system to where I can accept payment out in the field, or I can meet you somewhere down here toward the island, make it a little more convenient, but at this time, all of the payment is taken at the Shalimar office. So as it states on there, vendor application is $100, each vessel is $75, and then after March 1st, there are late fees for that. So some of the business regulations in the ordinance, again, I'm not gonna read specifically on all of this. If you want more information, you can refer to the ordinance, but your business location does have to be in a commercial zoned property. You have to have the required dockage, parking, and bathroom facilities, and then also meet all other location requirements. It cannot be located within 500 feet of any other business offering livery vessel for rent or lease. So anyone that is currently within 500 feet of another business is vetted. If you were a legally permitted business before this ordinance was enacted, then you're vetted, but any new business cannot be within 500 feet. And of course, it may not be located on or utilize any county, city property for the business-related activity, which means dropping off or picking up. Somebody cannot rent a vessel from you online and then you drop it off at the county park and hand them the keys. That's not allowed either. So the site requirements specifically, it has to have a physical location with a mailing address, a structure so that your employees are safe and that they can stay on site at all times during open business hours. Parking is 1 parking space per 4 passengers. You must have a dock, obviously. Restrooms, ADA restrooms with trash and recycling, and then also comply with all Florida state statute safety regulations. And a generalized business standard, there must be communication, so maintain a consistent phone number and an operable marine radio. All businesses with 1 or more rentals must have a motorized response vessel. So this is your emergency response vessel. Insurance is basically the same as FWC requires. You must have a business tax receipt and vessel registration for all of your vessels. There is also regulation on vessel markings. So I think I had a question out in the hallway about this earlier. Business name, phone number, and vessel name must be on the business and the vessel, able to be viewed from the water. It has to be in a visible location. And then there's also your customer flotation devices must also have the same information of adequate size and a location to be easily readable when approaching. Employee training. I think somebody else touched on this as well, another agency. So these are the requirements for employees for livery vessels within the county. They must have all of this training. After 30 days from the start of employment, they're required to have all of this training, and documentation that they have completed it must be kept at the business location for inspection. So this would include any employees that supervise, take reservations, handle paperwork, provide pre-ride or rental training. Before 30 days, so if an employee is shadowing somebody else, they are able to operate under supervision of somebody that has all of the training. Fueling. So these are the regulations regulations for fueling, pretty confident that everyone should be up to code with this already. But 50 feet from the water, you have to have a spill-proof nozzle. If fueling is done there at the business, then your employees must go through training. Fire extinguishers must be on site and operational. And in conjunction with that, emergency contingency plans. So at a minimum, the county is requiring that you have contacts to call, immediate steps, and reporting for fuel or oil spill, fuel fire, rental, vessel accident, medical emergency, inclement weather. And these are plans that need to be documented, not an idea that you have for it. It needs to be documented so that all of the employees are aware of it and they are trained on it. This ordinance also regulates rental customer requirements. So the livery vessel business must maintain a copy of the driver's license and also provide the training for Okaloosa boating, waterway safety video, and then any PWC or pontoon equipment, so teach them how to drive it. And then also be giving the following documentation. So they must be provided with emergency contact information, safety information for the vessel, a map of the area with restricted areas, and the location of your rental business. And then this is the wristband system, which I believe Maya will be covering as well. This is operator identification for if the vessel does get pulled over by the sheriff's office or FWC, the operator needs to have one of these colored wristbands on. And this basically specifies what category they fall under. If the operator's over 18 years and they're in that before 1988 jurisdiction, like it'd be a green wristband and then pink and yellow. So I won't go too in depth with that as Maya's gonna cover it. Enforcement and penalties. This ordinance is enforceable by the sheriff's office, any law enforcement officer of the city jurisdiction where the vendor lies within. So if, I haven't spoke with Fort Walton, but if they decide to adopt this ordinance, they are also allowed to enforce it and adopt the ordinance as well. Any certified law enforcement of the state, and then also the code enforcement. Possible penalties, code enforcement board civil citation, denial or suspension, revocation of your permit, and also criminal penalties. So I know I went through that pretty fast, but like I said, the ordinance is pretty in-depth, so I would encourage everybody to just take a look at that ordinance on the back of my card, scan the QR code, and then questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. How does the ordinance apply to paddlecraft? I guess if you're renting paddle boards or kayaks, I think.
So it doesn't. It's only for liveries.
Okay. And
I think we also had a question earlier if FWC's permitting was, what was the word? They're two
yeah,
separate.
I got it. Yeah. Does compliance with the FWC issued livery permit statute constitute compliance with the county livery ordinance?
Right. So it doesn't, because it's two separate registrations and ordinances. However, pretty much everything that you have with FWC can be brought to the county. So you do have to register with two different entities. So if you are in compliance with FWC, you will get approved and be in compliance with us as well.
So the next question is, if I have a livery permit from the city of Destin, I still need to get the county one as well?
Only if you're in the jurisdiction. So if your brick and mortar is in the city of Destin, you fall under city of Destin's jurisdiction. They regulate, they have a registration on their own. So their registration overlaps ours, and you do not need one with the county. However, if the city that your business is in does not have a regulation, then you do fall under the county and you would have to register with the county.
So it's all based on where your brick and mortar business address
Correct.
is?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
If you're in the unincorporated areas, you will need to register.
Okay. That's all we have for now.
Okay.
Great job, Chris.
Great. Thank you all for coming again.
Next up, we have the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, Mr. Doug Ritchie and Larry Messinger. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. Ladies first. Sorry, from the Okaloosa County Water Operators Coalition. Sorry, it was a small line on the thing. Ms. Maya Schilder. Sorry about that, gentlemen. Sorry, Maya.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to try to keep it kind of brief because I think we're all ready for it to be brief. I am Maya Schilder, and I am the incoming president of the Okaloosa County Water Sports Operators Coalition. I want to thank all the operators, law enforcement, city and county officials that came out today. When the coalition asked Destin a few years ago to have a safety meeting, we never had any idea that it would grow to what it has come to today. So we are really happy to see the growth that this event has become. A little bit about information about the coalition. We started in 2017 as a small group of operators to fight for a common cause. Since then, we've become a community that works together for legislative change at the local and state level, and we are passionately committed to safety, educating new and current livery operators on safety, and providing information to our members is really important to our mission. We have put together some QR links in this presentation of some of the most commonly requested information. Just a little click. Okay. First of all, our objectives are to share knowledge and resources with our industry stakeholders, protect the industry, the interest of water sports operators, enhance the safety of boating with public and private cooperation, and become a good steward to the community. One thing that I have really enjoyed in the last few years with the coalition is the community that we've gotten in the livery industry itself. If you would have gone back 10 years ago, we fought amongst ourselves. There was no real community, and now, John would call me about weather, or Kevin would call me about weather, or I would call somebody, what are you going to do about the storm rolling in? That was not something that happened before the coalition began. The QR codes that we were talking about, right now some of the most common questions that we're getting are about the ordinances that have been passed. So these are direct links to each municipality and FWC's ordinances or statutes, if anybody wants to go. And we're going to probably upload a lot of this stuff onto the coalition's website. I have been emailed and called a lot about the checklist for applications. Okaloosa County's is there, and the FWC's is there. Currently, Fort Walton Beach doesn't have one online. I believe Tim is going to probably get that up there before too long. And the city of Destin's is in their application packet, but it is not in a format that's super easy to, and it's definitely not this pretty. The wristband system. So this is a system that I kind of devised a few years ago. I always found that there was a disconnect between the hut and the dock. You would check somebody in, and they would go down to the dock, and they would say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be driving, and it was like, a 13-year-old. And the dock guys would not necessarily know because they weren't part of that initial registration process. So we came up with a system where we purchased inexpensive, they're called Tyvek wristbands, you can get them off of Amazon, and we came up with a system. Green means go. So green, drivers between the age of 18 to 28 with a boater's license or with a boater's license or born after January 1988. I think that's correct. The pink one we use for drivers who are between the age of 16 and 17 years old and have a boater's license and a driver's license. They've given us all that information, but they cannot sign a waiver because they are minors. So that means they have to have an adult down there with them at the dock to be out on the equipment. Yellow is for drivers between the age of 16 and 28 or under the age that would need the boater's license and can only drive with someone who has a green wristband. We added a red wristband for our system only because that means you absolutely have no business driving. And I think law enforcement would agree. They have actually seen and stopped people driving equipment out there with those red wristbands and escorted them back to the docks before. In 21 and 22, we produced 2 different safety videos. One was a navigational safety video for our waterways with navigational hazards and just common sense things for the waterways here. You can, these can be downloaded to your website so your customers can watch them ahead of time. And then the Wave Runner safety video is just excellent information for anybody who's out there renting jet skis. We are going to be producing the pontoon safety video this year. We would love for everybody to become members to help us pay for it. This is fairly current. You are required to have a map on your boats and to provide a navigational map for your customers. This is, John's put most of the current no-wake zones, I believe, are on this. There might be 1 or 2 that aren't. We're going to get it updated. But this shows all the no-wake zones currently in the county. In the education that we try to do, we try to follow a lot of the ordinances that get passed and make recommendations to members so that they can follow the guidelines. So these are some suggestions for fuel contingency and oil abatement plans. You know, sometimes you get told you have to do something and you have absolutely no idea how to follow through on it. So this one, John came up with this, Mr. Genius over there. The Coast Guard's going to be talking about it, and the auxiliary's going to be talking about it in just a few minutes. Anybody who does any kind of night rentals or after-hours rentals, and if you're going to have the Coast Guard auxiliary inspect your vessels, you have to have working nav lights. We all know saltwater and electronics are not friends, so it's the most common way you'll fail on a auxiliary inspection is your nav lights. So he just went out to Home Depot, bought a couple of pieces of PVC and the caps, and encased everything in there. You have to show your guest where it is and how to use it, of course, but as long as it's on board, it counts as having your lights. We also, in the last couple of years, produced safety stickers for vessels. We realized in the industry, I actually had people come back to the docks with Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard tried, or FWC, saying that they weren't told where the life jackets were, or they weren't told where this was. Well, we did tell them, they just didn't listen. So we offer stickers for sale at cost with different safety information on them. So when they say, I didn't know where the life jacket was, well, there's a giant yellow sticker, you did. And then also common sense safety information for the boats, not sliding down feet first on the double deckers. That is so critically important on Crab Island. I cannot stress it enough. People just don't think, and sliding down head first at Crab Island on the double deckers is a recipe for disaster. Also, we all don't even have to really discuss how dangerous bow riding is. So those bright yellow stickers can go on the inside of your gates on your pontoons and possibly save a life. Can't really see those. And these are the VHF procedures if you have those on your vessel. We also have added this year a seagrass protection sticker that can go on your boat for teaching your customers to make sure they understand how to keep the motor from damaging seagrass beds out at Crab Island. We have all seen the aerial photographs of the scarring that's being done out there, and we really do want to try and protect the environment. How do you become a member? You can QR right there. You could also go out to the table outside and ask us. We'll still be there after the meeting for a little bit. We have a website that you can get to through this QR code. And then also, we will be having our first meeting of the season at Shoreline Church. They have graciously donated space to us for the year to hold our meetings at. It will be February 13th at 1 o'clock, and we hope to see everybody there. Thank you.
Outstanding, Maya. Thank you very, very much. We didn't have any questions on that one. All right, let me double check here. Yes, our last presenter are the folks from the auxiliary. Come on up, gentlemen.
So, hi. So, thanks for hanging in there. And here's the deal. We don't have the authority in the auxiliary to tell you what to do. We're going to ask for your cooperation because we're on the education side, just so you know that. So, my name is Doug Ritchie. I'm district captain for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. I cover from Mississippi to the Appalachee Bay, including inland Georgia and Alabama, 330 plus auxiliaries. Who is the auxiliary? We're the trained volunteer reserves of the United States Coast Guard, established by Congress in 1939, leading up to the Second World War. We do just about every mission that active duty does. We are embedded at sea, in the air, and on land with active duty. There are 20,000 of us in the United States. We're very proud to serve, and they like us a lot because we're volunteers. We're free. So with me, I have Tony White, the flotilla commander from the Panama City Flotilla, and I have Larry Messenger, the Ox Paddlecraft expert and coordinator for the Florida Panhandle. So this won't take long. Don't worry, it won't be too painful. It's the clicker here. Okay. Which arrow? Right arrow. Okay.
Out on the water are people not wearing the proper life jackets or none at all.
Probably the single most important thing you could do is wear your life jacket. In recent information, 80% of the fatalities in recreational boating is due to drowning. And over 80% of those drownings were due to the fact that the person or the victim was not wearing a life preserver. Okay, so the point is, please wear it, okay? And we all know how it's not a lot of fun to go out and have fun and have to wear a life preserver at the same time. But the statistics show if you go overboard and you have a jacket on, you're going to survive. So wherever possible, especially the operator of the boat, please wear your life jacket and please use your engine cutoff switch. It is a rule, 26 feet and under. Once you're on plane, you must be wearing that little squiggly lanyard attached to your belt or your PFD. Please do that, because if you go overboard, your boat won't continue to sail away on you. It'll stop and wait for you to come and get back in. Whoop. Okay, so that's life jackets, and then real quick and jump to vessel exams. We heard about that earlier. Okay, here's the cool part. You don't have to do this. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. This is voluntary. There are some advantages to it, however. If you're a bareboat or livery operator and you have us come and look at your vessel, and it is a vessel exam, all our job is to make sure we maintain, your vessel maintains compliance with the regulations. If you do that, you get to display this decal for the year of the exam. And it notifies law enforcement, but probably just as importantly, your customers, that you've taken the extra effort and care to make your vessel as safe as possible for them, for their day on the water with you. So highly recommend you do it. Aquawk and John from Luther's has an excellent workaround with the lights. That has been a big issue with the older pontoon boats. I'll just make one comment. Please make sure you know which is red and which is green. Who knows where the red light goes? Nobody knows. Okay. How about this auxiliarist down here? Does he know where the red light goes? Oh, it goes on the port side, right? Very good. And by the way, the reason we ask for those lights is conditions change quickly, and you know what happens. You can go from fully visible to I can't see anything out here. Okay, and here's the other one. This is for all charter operators. This is the 6-pack that we talked about earlier that we heard from our active duty counterparts. This is actually a Coast Guard sticker. It's valid for a year from date of passing. The guidebook is shown on the right. I do have a QR code. I don't have it up here, but I can give it to you later if you want to see that guidebook, or I can email it to you. My email address is there. We have a few, we actually have 2 UPV examiners in this room, Mike Fitzgerald from Panama City and myself. We have a number of vessel examiners in this room as well. So we would like to encourage you to do that. And I can tell you, why should I do it? Well, it makes your vessel safe for you and your passengers for hire. You can call up your friendly insurance company and say, I just had a Coast Guard examination and I passed. And here's a picture of my decal and here's my paperwork. I want a premium reduction. And I can tell you personally, it works, especially if you have an agent, independent agent. They will advocate for you to get a reduction in your premium. The other thing it does, it shows law enforcement what you're operating as an uninspected passenger vessel, technically under federal law. It shows that law enforcement team, whether it's the Coast Guard, the sheriff, FWC, whoever, that this person probably is taking good care of their vessel. But one thing to point out, it includes the MMC captain or operator in the evaluation. And you heard earlier about the drug consortium program. That's a big deal. That has to be, that and the alcohol test kit, things like that. That has to be followed. So it is a pilot and craft exam. It's not just the craft. Okay, so we're talking about prevention, and the easiest way to prevention is please wear your life jacket, please have the proper life jackets, and please get your vessels checked. Okay, now we're going to have Larry Messenger come up, and Larry's going to talk about paddlecraft. Larry?
Last year I talked to this group about our relatively new paddlecraft safety initiative called OXPAD. Last year we finished our second full year of operation, and I think we achieved most of our goals. One of the things we're still seeking are better ways to get our safety messages out to the millions of paddlecraft users there are across the country. And doing it one at a time is going to take forever. So we have been working on some mass media approaches. What you're about to see is one example of what we've done. This is a 60-second PSA that will be airing on beach TV up and down the coast. A lot of visitors will have a chance to actually see this as they check into their rooms.
Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to the world's most beautiful beaches. If your plans include kayaking or stand-up boards, we have some important safety messages for you. First and foremost, every occupant of a vessel is legally required to have a personal flotation device available, but we strongly urge you to wear it at all times and also leash up if you're using a stand-up board. In addition to that legally required whistle, always have additional communication such as a working cell phone or portable marine radio. And even before you leave home, communicate with someone about where you're going and when you expect to return. And always be aware of your surroundings. For example, summertime Gulf storms blow up quickly. It is a fact. Kayaks cannot outrun approaching thunderstorms. And select a paddling venue that matches your skill and experience level. Be brilliantly visible and take time to learn the feel of an unfamiliar vessel and consider practicing self-rescue from the water. And finally, take your fun seriously. We hope to see you again soon. These messages brought to you by the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Another tool that we are trying to use to get out to the public is through paddlecraft rental outlets. We would very much like to come out and talk to your staffs about paddlecraft safety ideas and how to get messages to your customers in the precious few minutes you have to spend with them before you send them off on their day of fun. I'm not going to go through the details, but once again, PFDs. Your customers can do some pretty unsmart things and get themselves in trouble pretty quickly on a paddlecraft. But once they're in trouble, wearing a PFD provides their best chance of survival, and we sure hope you can get that message across. One thing not in this chart that we also emphasize is communications. Again, that phone, if you're in an area where the cell phone is working, someone in their group needs to have a way of communicating the outside world if someone really gets into trouble. And emergency planning. And you heard Chris talk a lot about what your requirements are here in Okaloosa County. Unfortunately, elsewhere where we operate, up and down the coast, they don't have those kind of requirements. But we still really emphasize the need to have an emergency plan. It needs to be written. It needs to be in such simple language and posted so that if something goes wrong, your staff, everyone, knows exactly who to call first, second, third, and what to do first, second, and third without thinking about it. It's right there in front of their faces. We strongly recommend that you practice it. Run a drill. The Coast Guard Auxiliary runs man overboard drills. It's not our plan for people to be in the water, but it happens, and everyone should know instantaneously what to do to get things in motion to save a person's life. Another thing that we are working on is a different approach to getting information into people's hands. Last couple of years, we had these big, thick new owner envelopes, just stuffed full of pamphlets and stickers, and we're concerned a lot of that stuff is not getting to the ultimate customers, and a lot of people aren't actually opening that big envelope up and reading the stuff inside. So this year we're going to be experimenting with a simple 4x9 rack card, something that if you read those 6 points, it'll save 99% of people's lives on paddlecraft, and it's something someone can read in 15 seconds. If they want to get into details, there are QR codes at the bottom, and they can really dig in and learn a lot about paddlecraft safety. So with that, I'd like to introduce Tony, and Tony's got a few people he's going to introduce.
This looks like the comedy club at 3 in the morning. So, as Doug Ritchie said, I'm the flotilla commander over in Panama City Beach. And last year I had the opportunity to come here, meet Little John, and see all the good work that you folks have done. And I was very, very interested in getting this into Panama City and Bay County because I see all the goodness that comes from it. In that process, that we have an absolute massive problem with illegal charters, as does a lot of the area. And one of those individuals that's impacted by it is Josh Shawls, who's sitting over at that middle table. Raise your hand, Josh. And who operates Heritage Charters. And he's watching guys go out with 16 people on a pontoon boat, and he knows that, you know, they know who they are, and we need to do something about it. And part of that would be to establish a coalition here, much like you talked about, you know, where it just started with a handful of folks. So what I would ask of you is that if you've got co-captains that are living in the Bay County area and you talk to them, see if you can find a way to kind of bring that into a conversation as we try to bring more people together and build a coalition. We've been discussing with Little John about actually maybe expanding it and using you guys as the parent, and we develop as a child over here until we can grow up and graduate onto our own. So, but I thank you for the hard work that you folks do and all of the progress that you've made. You really are the pointy end of the spear here. So we thank you, and we look forward to maybe using some of your resources and your knowledge in order to help build this in Bay County as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you guys. No questions there. I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you guys all for coming out, and see you next year. Have a safe year.